Chapter 237. Next door, Lian Xiao was stunned for a moment before she understood. Xia Qing and Qi Feng didn't live in the house next to the Wang Fu. Lian Xiao and Lu Zhu thought that Jiang Wan wanted to ask Xia Qing about the emperor's health. After all, the emperor's life depended on Xia Qing's medicine. Without Xia Qing, the emperor would not have survived these few days. Jiang Wan looked for Xia Qing for this reason. Now there are only two princes in the court. One is the 13th prince and the other is Xianli. Since I don't want Xianli to get that position, I must be in alliance with the 13th prince. In this game of chess, we have already bet on the 13th prince, so I must do something. As you can see, Eunuch Li is dead. You are so smart, you should be able to see that Eunuch Li died in the hands of Xian Li's subordinates. Xian Li has already made the first move. The first thing he needs to do now is to make an imperial edict while His Majesty is still alive. Otherwise, he will immediately let His Majesty die and destroy the imperial edict that the emperor originally wanted to appoint the 13th prince. Wait, Qi Feng opened his eyes wide. Third sister-in-law, I am a little confused by what you said. What do you mean by the emperor originally wanted to appoint the 13th prince as the crown prince? How do you know that the emperor wanted to appoint the 13th prince as the crown prince? In this world, the person he least wanted to see in danger was her. Jiang Wan smiled slightly. It doesn't matter, I just went next door to take a look. Qi Feng looked at her with some doubts, as if he still had some doubts about her words. Jiang Ruan's expression did not change, but her heart was deep in thought. She naturally knew that the emperor would definitely leave an imperial edict because he did so in her previous life. It was just that the imperial edict in her previous life was not found in the end because at that time, Xianli had already ascended the throne. Perhaps the person who left the imperial edict had also been chased by Xianli. In short, Xianli sat on that position, and it was justifiable. Because at that time, besides Xian Pei, he was the only prince left in the palace. At that time, no one had ever thought of Xian Pei as the future crown prince of the great Jin dynasty. What do you mean by the best effect? Qi Feng said this sentence with difficulty. Jiang Wan smiled faintly and said, I have long said that since Xianli acted in such a hurry, he must have received news from Li Ganggang. If he really wanted to make him the crown prince, why would he be so anxious to silence him? Because that person is not him. As for the imperial edict, it is inevitable. Moreover, the spies in the palace have also returned. There is no doubt that it is an imperial edict. Xian Li will think that the thing in my hand is an imperial edict, and will destroy it with his own hands, so he won't continue to investigate the real imperial edict. Shao and you will have to seize the time and opportunity we'll be fighting for. Moreover, I am in the hands of the Southern Xinjiang Holy Maiden. The Southern Xinjiang Holy Maiden will want to torture me, but Xian Li must properly support me. Because with his scheming mind, he must use me in exchange for greater benefits. He wants to use me to make a deal with Shao, and it is best to obtain the support of Jinying Wang Fu. Jiang Ruan's gaze was deep and her tone was calm, as if these things that concerned her life would not happen to her. She said, in this way, there will be differences between Xianli and the people of southern Xinjiang. I have seen the southern Xinjiang Holy Maiden. She has a fierce temperament and will certainly not easily admit defeat. The alliance between Xianli and the southern Xinjiang is not very stable. Once there is a conflict, he will have a headache. Sitting on the mountain and watching the tigers fight, the ones who benefit will always be us. He was still thinking about it, but Jiang Wan had already spoken. She said, I want to ask you for a favor. As soon as these words came out, Qi Feng came back to his senses and quickly said, I actually forgot about this matter. For so many years, Qi Feng had seen the emperor's care for Shao. Because of this, even if all his colleagues thought that Shao was a traitor, in Qi Feng's eyes, there was no difference. He would not link this matter with the emperor's decision. But now that Jiang Wan had reminded him, Qi Feng also understood. Indeed, perhaps the emperor trusted Xiao Xiao, but it did not mean that he trusted the entire Jinying Wang Fu. And the reputation of Jinying Wang Fu among the civil and military officials as a traitor was too stubborn. It would not be persuasive at all. It was understandable that the emperor did not hand over the imperial edict to Xiao Xiao. "What do you have to say to him?" Beauty Xiao said in a low voice. The displeasure in her tone could be heard through the curtains. These words were a little strange. Qi Feng also found it a little strange. He did not know why, but he always felt that Jiang Ruan was very serious when she said these words. It was as if in this life, taking revenge against Xianli was her ultimate goal. In fact, a long time ago, Qi Feng had felt Jiang Ruan's hatred towards Xianli. She was always ruthless. She almost cruelly blocked Xianli's path to the throne. In fact, for the Genie Wei, it was not important who became the emperor. But now, Qi Feng had clearly seen that Jiang Ruan had used her ability to influence Xiao Xiao. The entire Jinying Wang Fu, or rather, the entire Genie Wei, had already stood on the opposite side of Xianli. For Xianli, this was undoubtedly bad news. If there was no obstruction from Jinying Wang Fu, it would have been much easier. The emperor is seriously ill. There are internal and external troubles. The fight for the throne is imminent. The Jin court is in danger. Qi Feng said, but this has nothing to do with third sister-in-law. Early the next morning, Xiao Xiao went out. Jiang Ruan washed up and changed her clothes. Lian Xiao saw that she seemed to be going out and asked curiously, "Is young Furen going out?" Yesterday, Jiang Ruan did not say that she was going out today. At this critical juncture, she probably would not be in the mood to go out for a walk. Third sister-in-law praises me like this, I feel even more uneasy in my heart. Qi Feng smiled and changed the topic, but today, third sister-in-law did not come to see me to drink tea. Did something happen? In the end, Qi Feng's words still involuntarily revealed a trace of concern. As soon as these words came out, he was also aware of it. He could not help but feel a little annoyed. Jiang Ruan had Xiao Xiao by her side. Qi Feng knew best what kind of person Xiao Xiao was. If Jiang Ruan had anything, Xiao Xiao would definitely do it for her. How would it be his turn to care for her? In the evening, after Xiao Xiao returned to the Fu, he naturally heard the news from housekeeper Lin that Jiang Ruan had gone to see Qi Feng. Housekeeper Lin did not deliberately undermine him. He was just annoyed that his master did not understand. He was afraid that the daughter-in-law of the Wang Fu would run away with someone else. This was to remind Xiao Xiao not to always think about business and to be more attentive to his wife. This was probably the difference between Qi Feng and others. No matter when, he could always clearly recognize his own position and would not break the original situation. The beautiful woman in front of him was good at grasping the weaknesses of people's hearts, seeing through their desires. She was good at scheming and planning, but she always put herself in danger. She was like a chess player who was very good at playing chess. She held everyone in the palm of her hand and turned them into chess pieces. When she laid out the plan, she even included herself. She had already set up the chess game, and she was going to be the little pawn that crossed the river. She was going to fight alone on the other side of the Chu River and Han River. Qi Feng took a deep breath and said, "Third sister-in-law, I promise you, I will help you." He smiled and slowly said, "Don't worry, we will definitely find you, very soon." Qi Feng suddenly felt a little annoyed. He secretly hated himself for being so smart and wanting to become the military advisor of the genie guards. He deeply knew that what Jiang Ruan said was indeed not wrong. This was indeed the simplest and most direct way. For the time being, there was no better plan than this. Because of this, from the perspective of the overall situation, Qi Feng had no reason to refuse. He had already agreed to Jiang Ruan's plan in his heart, but that person. Why was that person her? But what does third sister-in-law want to do? Qi Feng asked with a serious look. Jiang Yuan smiled slightly. She probably also saw that Qi Feng deliberately made the atmosphere relaxed. After following Xiao Xiao for a long time, she was better at concealing her water chestnut side. On the surface, she looked more gentle, but in her bones, she was still as sharp as ever. But that sharpness was only for the opponent. She raised the teacup in front of her and gently took a sip. She smiled and said, "It's very fragrant." When Jiang Yuan heard this, she did not deny it. She said softly, "Yes, Xiao Xiao does not know about this, and you don't have to tell him." Jiang Yuan looked at him. Xianli wants to steal the imperial edict. His power should not be underestimated. Xianli may not be afraid, but for so many years, he has been planning for this. He has gathered all kinds of people to form a network. The size of this network is not something you and I can imagine. I am afraid that there will be mistakes, so I want to do something to let Xianli think that he has found the imperial edict. After that, I can buy some time for the 13th prince. During this time, I will arrange a plan to take down Xianli. Yes, but Xianli is very cunning. I am afraid that a fake imperial edict cannot be hidden from him, so we can only use the real imperial edict to exchange for it. But this imperial edict is not that imperial edict. He did not destroy the imperial edict to establish the crown prince. When Jiang Yuan finished, she slowly put down the teacup in her hand. She looked at Qi Feng and said, "I know that you also have people in the court. You are the military advisor of the genie guards. What I want you to help is to let you know that the imperial edict is now in my hands." Xiao Xiao expressed what he wanted to say with his own actions. "How can you be sure?" Qi Feng was stunned. He was silent for a long time before he said, "You mean, you want to make a fake imperial edict to confuse Xianli, and then let him think that he destroyed the real imperial edict. In fact, the real imperial edict is in someone else's hands, is that it?" Qi Feng listened to Jiang Yuan's words in silence. His expression gradually calmed down, and he seemed to have returned to being the strategist he used to be. However, only he knew that the hands in his sleeves had long been clenched into fists. He slowly said, "What about you? What price do you need to pay?" Xiao Xiao really lived up to expectations. When he went back, he told Jiang Yuan about this matter. After taking a bath, he put on his outer clothes and sat next to Jiang Yuan. He said as if nothing had happened, "I heard that you went to see Qi Feng today." Third sister-in-law, Qi Feng was a little restless. He thought about it and said seriously, "In any case, third brother treats you sincerely. Since you don't want to let third brother know about this matter, I think you are probably going to put yourself in danger again. I am sorry that I cannot help you with this." Although Qi Feng said this and placed all the blame on Xiao Xiao, only he himself knew that this was not the reason. It was because he could not watch Jiang Yuan put herself in danger without doing anything. From the time he knew Jiang Yuan until now, the most common thing that Jiang Yuan did was to follow the example of a junior succeeding the senior. This sounded good, but every time she did it, she took a great risk. Even bystanders would feel frightened. Qi Feng. He himself could not let Jiang Yuan put herself in danger. In some aspects, Jiang Yuan was very similar to Xiao Xiao, especially when they did things with a very clear purpose. Since she did not tell Xiao Xiao, according to the original reason, Xiao Xiao and Jiang Yuan were the closest people to each other. For Jiang Yuan to forsake what was close at hand and seek what was far away, there was only one possibility, and that was that Xiao Xiao did not agree. Jiang Yuan repeatedly obstructed Xian Li's plan, and Qi Feng had always been unable to figure out why. Now, from her mouth, it turned out that there was a blood feud between her and Xian Li. Although he did not know what it was, Qi Feng also felt that Jiang Yuan was not lying. He looked at Jiang Yuan in a daze, only to hear Jiang Yuan's faint words continue. Lian Xiao and Dewdrop looked at each other. Naturally, Dewdrop and Lian Xiao knew Qi Feng's feelings for Jiang Yuan. At first, the atmosphere between Xiao Xiao and Jiang Yuan became a little subtle. Although it was later confirmed that it was just a trap set by Jiang Wan, as long as they thought about it, they still felt a little uneasy. Tianzhu did not have any expression. Qi Feng was startled when he heard this and immediately said, "Okay. Come in and talk. I want to find Xia Qing." Xia Qing entered the palace and had a few words with Qi Feng. Jiang Wan was flipping through the book in her hand. Suddenly, the book in her hand was pulled away by someone. When she raised her head, Xiao Xiao's handsome face was right in front of her, but it looked a little awkward. Jiang Wan put down the book and looked at him helplessly. "What do you want to say?" These words almost did not hide his feelings. Qi Feng's eyes were filled with regret, heartache, shock, sadness, and all kinds of complex feelings intertwined, causing Jiang Wan to be slightly stunned. All along, Qi Feng had concealed his feelings very well. He did not want to break the current situation, but in the face of the woman in front of him, he really could not suppress his feelings. "Because the sacred maiden hates me." Jiang Wan interrupted him. "The sacred maiden of the southern Xinjiang hates me to the core and her heart belongs to Xiao Xiao. In this way, because of a woman's jealousy, she will certainly not let me die easily. And because she hates me, the news that the imperial edict is in my hands will be more convincing. Now that the southern Xinjiang and Xianli have formed an alliance, some decisions of the southern Xinjiang will definitely affect Xianli, including suspicion." She saw that Qi Feng gradually calmed down, and then continued, "I have told you long ago that now Jining Wangfu and the 13th prince are bound together for good or ill. If the nest is overturned, no eggs will be intact. To ensure the smooth ascension of the 13th prince to the throne, this is the only way. Xiao Xiao's purpose is in the southern Xinjiang. Although he can intervene in the affairs of the court, it is not as convenient as Xianli. Only this plan, with me as bait, can achieve the best effect. She used to be reckless in doing things, so after her rebirth, she especially cherished her life. Although she had risked her life many times, in fact, those were all after countless demonstrations and planning, so she could deeply understand the outcome. But this time was different. Although she and Qi Feng spoke with confidence, in fact, people's hearts were always changeable. In a life and death situation, no one could predict what would happen next. Qi Feng was not stupid. Jiang Wan specifically came to him for help, so something must have happened. If Qi Feng could do it, Xiao Xiao could definitely do it. Since Xiao Xiao could do it, why did Jiang Wan need Qi Feng's help? There was only one possibility, that was, Jiang Wan did not tell Xiao Xiao what she wanted to do. Why did she not tell Xiao Xiao? Qi Feng's heart moved, and then he blurted out, "You want to hide it from third brother?" Third brother does not agree. As if she had already expected Qi Feng's reaction, Jiang Wan just sighed softly and said, "Qi Feng, do you know what the situation is now?" Jiang Wan withdrew her thoughts and looked at Qi Feng. The imperial edict left by the emperor must be in the hands of a minister, and Xianli will use all means to kill that minister and destroy the imperial edict. Who knew that when Lu Zhu and the others followed Jiang Wan to the next room, Xia Qing was not in the room. Qi Feng smiled and said, "Xia Wu has entered the palace. Why is third sister-in-law looking for him?" Qi Feng was startled. Jiang Wan continued, "How could the emperor hand over something like an imperial edict to Xiao Xiao? In this world, the ruler is the most suspicious. If you do this, even if you tell others that the imperial edict is real, the civil and military officials will not believe it. They will only think that the imperial edict is fake." Qi Feng was startled. Jiang Wan frowned and said, "They will not kill me." But she still had to do this, not for anything else, but for Pei and Xiao Xiao. Xiao Xiao was not willing to be the master of the great Jin dynasty, but the emperor still had a backup plan. Rather than saying that this time she was fighting with Xianli, it was better to say that she was playing a game with the emperor. She seemed to be incomparably brave as she pressed forward, but in reality, it was also because Xiao Xiao was behind her. Because of that person, she relied and trusted him wholeheartedly. Thinking up to this point, Jiang Yuan could not help but smile. That smile was extremely faint, and it quickly disappeared from her face. Qi Feng was startled and stared at her without blinking. Jiang Yuan looked at him calmly and did not avoid his scrutinizing gaze. After a long time, Qi Feng said, "Third sister-in-law, does third brother not know that you want my help?" Qi Feng did not think that Jiang Yuan was looking for him to reminisce about the old days. It was not that Qi Feng did not see the matter of Jiang Yuan using him a few days ago. He and Xiao Xiao had been brothers for so many years, and he was also the military advisor of the Genie Guards. His mind had always been very clear. Even if he liked Jiang Yuan, he would not completely lose his mind. Naturally, he could see that Jiang Yuan was deliberately trying to get close to him. Qi Feng could not tell what he was thinking, but because of this, he did not have any dissatisfaction with Jiang Yuan, nor would he have any estrangement with Xiao Xiao. Jiang Yuan also smiled, raised the teacup and gently touched it with Qi Feng, "Thank you." But third sister-in-law, Qi Feng still asked, since His Majesty left an imperial edict, why not leave it in Jining Wangfu? Looking at the entire Great Jin dynasty, now only the Genie Guards have enough power to compete with the 8th prince. Leaving it in Jining Wangfu is naturally a foolproof plan. His Majesty must have thought of this, but why did he still put the imperial edict in the hands of other ministers? Jiang Yuan sat down with him in the room, and Qi Feng poured her a cup of tea. Xia Qing was a common doctor, and Qi Feng did not care about trifles. In the courtyard, except for a few servants and Xia Qing's medicine boy, there was not even a servant. Qi Feng had to pour the tea himself, but it was obvious that he was very good at it. He smiled and said, "Jun Shan Silver Needles, third sister-in-law has tasted all kinds of good tea. I hope you don't dislike the tea in my small temple. I have brought out the best." Jiang Yuan shook her head and said, "I am not looking for him, I am looking for you." Jiang Yuan ignored the deep meaning in Qi Feng's eyes and said lightly, "What I have to do is just to put on a show. There is no problem with me. Qi Feng, your task is more difficult. Compared with me, the burden of this matter actually falls on you. I know that you and Xiao Xiao are brothers, and he will certainly not agree to this matter, but I believe in you. No matter how much the southern frontier holy maiden hates me, with Xianli here, she can't hurt me for the time being. You just need to find me before I get hurt. I believe in the Genie Guards, and I believe in you." This smile fell into Qi Feng's eyes, and he also smiled, but the smile was very bitter. He knew why Jiang Yuan smiled. Xiao Xiao was really lucky. "You want to use yourself as bait." Not waiting for Jiang Yuan to continue, Qi Feng could not help but stand up. He seemed to realize that his performance was too emotional, but he still could not hold back and cried out, "This can't be, it's too dangerous. An ordinary man's wealth is his own ruin. Do you know what will happen? They will kill you." "No, this actually has something to do with me," Jiang Yuan suddenly said. Qi Feng was startled, only to hear Jiang Yuan's faint voice, "From the day you met me, I think you have already seen that there is an irreconcilable hatred between me and Xianli. If this hatred is not avenged, it is in vain. When Xiao Xiao was not there, you saw that I kept Xianli in check and balance. It was not all for Jining Wangfu. In fact, it was just because of a private grudge. This is a long story, and I will not tell you in detail. You only need to know that Xianli and I are enemies in this life. Naturally, we will not rest until one of us dies." Qi Feng spoke unhurriedly, but clearly. In the shortest time, he had already figured out the key points. Jiang Yuan was slightly startled by the question. Why did the emperor not hand over the imperial edict to Jining Wangfu? Naturally, it was because Xiao Xiao did not want to sit in that position. If the imperial edict was really handed over to Xiao Xiao, she was afraid that before Xianli could do anything, Xiao Xiao would destroy the imperial edict himself. The emperor's imperial edict was not written for Xianpei at all. It was written for Xiao Xiao. Feng did not know Xiao Xiao's background, so he did not know the reason behind it. He only saw that this matter was not appropriate. Jiang Wan could not tell him this reason, so she just smiled and said, "Have you forgotten what kind of reputation Jinying Wangfu has?" Chapter 238. Xian Pei's eyes became hot and tears almost fell, but he knew that he could not cry. He was now an adult, so he could not be as ignorant as he was in his previous life and make Jiang Wan worry. He clenched his teeth and forced his tears back. The people in the palace were cold and the people were gone. There was only one person in the world who could tell you, "I will fight for what you want." This was such a difficult sentence to say. He naturally referred to Xianli. Both mother and son were well aware of this. Xian Pei raised his eyebrows and beamed with joy. How would he dare to find trouble with me? He was originally a cowardly tortoise, and now he can't wait to close himself off. At this critical juncture, he will not make any mistakes. Even if I spit on him now, he will say that he is a brother and will not punish me. Jiang Wan smiled. "All right, now I want to ask you, where is the imperial edict, and who is the person you placed by the emperor's side?" There were two imperial edicts, one with Xian Pei's name and the other with Xiao Xiao's. If Xiao Xiao really did not accept the edict, he would let Xian Pei ascend to the throne to ensure that nothing went wrong. But Xian Pei's imperial edict would not appear unless it was absolutely necessary. "This is a long story," Jiang Wan interrupted him. "If you really want to know the reason, go find Xiao Xiao yourself. If he agrees, I will tell you." Xiao Xiao's past was not a light topic. Jiang Wan felt that it was somewhat inappropriate to tell Xiao Xiao like this. If Xiao Xiao was willing, then they could talk. Jiang Wan withdrew her thoughts and looked at the youth in front of her. "Do you want to be the emperor?" Xiao Xiao hesitated. Jiang Wan was so insistent, and he had always followed her wishes, so he did not say more. He only gave a few more instructions to Tianzhu. Jiang Wan smiled and stood in front of Xiao Xiao. Xiao Xiao also had to go out today. The matters in the brocade guard were more complicated, and he also had to analyze the secret deployment of the southern border. Early in the morning, he had to go to the Tianji battalion. Jiang Wan looked at him and took the initiative to help him tidy up the wrinkles on his sleeves. Jiang Wan. Now the emperor wanted to repeat the same trick, but he did not expect that this time, everything would be different. Xian Pei had already grown into someone who could contend with Xianli, and Xiao Xiao didn't want this position at all. "I see," Jiang Wan murmured. At this point, she finally understood all of the emperor's plans. The emperor was indeed not as incompetent as he appeared on the surface, or perhaps the incompetence on the surface was just an act. Perhaps he had already discovered that Xianli had poisoned him earlier, and now he was just beating him at his own game. "I'm going to the palace." Jiang Wan smiled. "Leave the account book on the table. I'll continue watching it later." Cough, cough, Jiang Wan abruptly regained her composure. She felt somewhat angry that she had been momentarily dazzled by Xiao Xiao's beauty. Regarding Xiao Xiao's sudden action, she did not know what to say. After a long while, he glared at Xiao Xiao and took a step back. "There's someone here. In this world, if you want something, then take it. If you can't get it, then fight for it." "But Jiang Wan looked at him. "The things that you want, I will fight for you." "Mushiro?" Jiang Wan was a little surprised. Mushiro was a famous cold beauty in the palace. Jiang Wan had also suspected Mushiro's identity. A beautiful woman who was excessively cold and could still obtain the emperor's favor, she must have some tricks up her sleeve. How could she be that simple? But later, when she saw that Mushiro did not do anything and did not participate in the muddy waters of the inner palace at all, she was relieved. She only thought that it was a woman who originally did not want to enter the palace but had no choice but to stubbornly hold on to her own perseverance. Xiao Xiao actually had the time to take a walk with her in his busy schedule. Jiang Wan naturally agreed and smiled. "Okay. Lu Zhu stuck out her tongue and giggled, not responding to his words. Jiang Wan, on the other hand, carefully looked at housekeeper Lin. Sure enough, housekeeper Lin looked much younger today. Although this change was not much, it still gave people a feeling of brightening. Jiang Wan knew of housekeeper Lin's past and thought that housekeeper Lin's charm at that time must have made people sigh. However, all beauties in the world were white bones, and their appearance was nothing more than ripples. Since housekeeper Lin was able to give up the appearance that everyone chased after, he was obviously a man of great wisdom and was worthy of encouragement. Xian Pei's face fell when he heard this. Ask him everything. Mother, you can't be insisting on following those 3 obediences and 4 virtues, right? It's just a mere genieing Wang, I don't want to know his secrets. I naturally have my ways to know. He stubbornly said. Then. Xian Pei still wanted to ask. However, what Xian Pei said was also true. Xian Li was a cautious person. It was precisely because he did not obtain the throne in a just and honorable manner that he had to pay more attention to what outsiders said. Therefore, he would not let anyone leave behind any evidence. At this time, he had to assume the posture of a wise ruler. Even if he really wanted to do something, he absolutely did not dare to do it in the open and cause too much of a commotion. As soon as they entered the southern courtyard, Xian Pei was still practicing calligraphy. When he saw Jiang Wan come over, he was a little surprised at first, but then he was overjoyed. He immediately threw away the brush in his hand and greeted her, Mu. Wang Fei. For Xian Pei to be able to obtain news of the imperial edict so easily, it must have been because someone close to the emperor had pointed it out. Originally, Jiang Wan had thought that Xian Pei had roped in Eunuch Li, but now Eunuch Li was dead. If it really was Eunuch Li, then the secret had most likely been discovered by Xian Li's people. However, Xian Li's people did not make any moves. Without a doubt, Xian Pei's people were not Eunuch Li at all. Who could it be? When Jiang Wan and the others arrived at the palace, they first went to the Palace of Compassionate and Peaceful to sit with Empress Dowager Ida. Empress Dowager Ida looked as vigorous and decisive as ever, but she could no longer conceal the vicissitudes of life between her brows. The woman who had once dominated the rebellion of the previous dynasty's 8 princes had finally shown signs of old age under the ravages of time. Now that the emperor was seriously ill, Empress Dowager Ida had to forget the fact that she was a mother. The first thing she had to do was to appease the court officials and tidy up the inner palace. The huge waves of the struggle for the throne were hidden under the calm surface. Empress Dowager Ida could not possibly not know that it was difficult to maintain the overall situation under such circumstances. But why? Naturally, it was because of Xiao Xiao. Xiao Xiao naturally would not stop her. After a moment of silence, he said, the capital is not peaceful. Let Jin 1 and Jin 2 follow you. The details of the people of the southern Xinjiang were not yet clear. Perhaps they had some tricks up their sleeves. However, Jiang Wan shook her head and rejected his suggestion. There's no need. Brocade 1 and Brocade 2 still have their own missions to complete. Today, I will only be entering the palace and will not stay for long. With Tianzhu by my side, nothing will happen. Moreover, the people of the southern Xinjiang can't wait to hide, so why would they expose their identities? Don't worry, I will be back soon. Pei, it is not your name on the imperial edict, but Xian Li does not know about it, right? Jiang Wan asked lightly. Lu Zhu's string of words made Steward Lin choke. He paused for a moment before saying, Smelly girl, what nonsense are you talking about? I have already told you, this old man used to be a distinguished and elegant handsome man. Many young ladies and young wives had their hearts set on this old man. What rouge? This old man is also a man, why would I need that? It's because I was born beautiful. Imperial mother, I will fight for the things you want for you as well. Xian Pei thought to himself. He heard Jiang Ruan's voice again, then Pei, can you tell me, where did you hide the imperial edict? Jiang Wan was suddenly startled and asked, "Who is the name on the other imperial edict?" Speaking up to this point, she was actually shocked and guessed who that person was. It was as if at this moment, all her previous doubts had flowed into a river and formed a complete plan. And Xian Pei did not disappoint and said the answer, "Jining Wang, Xiao Xiao." Jiang Wan did not have much affection for Empress Dowager Ida. When she had first approached her, she had only wanted to use Empress Dowager Ida to raise her own status. But now the situation was different. Empress Dowager Ida was Xiao Xiao's biological grandmother. Even if she had done something in the past, it seemed that she had not forced Xiao Xiao to do anything. And Jiang Wan had also clearly seen Empress Dowager Ida's attitude. She would not let Xiao Xiao sit on the emperor's throne. Her thoughtful gaze fell on housekeeper Lin, and he could not help but feel a layer of goosebumps. He only felt that he did not know what Jiang Wan was thinking, and he could not help but feel a little guilty. He quickly said a few words and went out to prepare a horse for Jiang Wan. Xiao Xiao was slightly startled. Although Jiang Wan was very close to him now, she had never bothered about trifling matters other than trying to figure out people's minds. He was somewhat flattered that she had taken the initiative so early in the morning. Xian Pei's speech now unconsciously carried a bit of a bandit's aura, and he did not know where he had learned it from. Jiang Ruan's gaze unconsciously drifted to Mingyu, who was standing to the side. Although Mingyu was the person Xiao Xiao had arranged for Xian Pei, Mingyu used to be an embroidered uniform guard. The embroidered uniform guard originally had to crawl through piles of dead people. This Mingyu stayed with Xian Pei every day, inevitably leading him astray. Xian Pei's current image on the outside was that of a noble and refined young man of the royal family, but why did he speak like a bandit? Jiang Wan had some doubts in her heart as to why Xiao Xiao had sent Mingyu over. Okay. Jiang Wan nodded. Xian Pei was stunned again and raised his head to look at Jiang Wan. He thought that Jiang Wan would be angry or have some other expression, but he had never expected her to be so calm. Because in their previous lives in the palace, Jiang Wan and he had experienced too many painful things, and the source of everything was just because of human desire. Now, he wanted to be the emperor because he wanted to become stronger. Perhaps only then would he be able to protect the people he wanted to protect, and only then would he be able to completely take Jiang Wan under his wing. But in the eyes of outsiders, he was only doing this for his own ambitions and selfish desires. How Jiang Wan would view him, Xian Pei did not dare to think. Although he had already expected this possibility, when these words came out of Jiang Ruan's mouth, Xian Pei could not help but feel excited. He suppressed the excitement in his heart and looked at Jiang Wan doubtfully and asked, "But Imperial Mother, why did Imperial Father appoint Jining Wang as the Crown Prince?" When he saw the Imperial Edict, the shock in his heart was simply indescribable. But no matter how he investigated, he could not find the reason. It was as if all the reasons had been erased and disappeared completely, leaving not even the slightest possibility. Xian Pei said, "Imperial Mother, could it be? He is also Imperial Father's son." Xian Pei looked at Jiang Wan and suddenly thought of something. "Imperial Mother, did something happen for you to come looking for me today?" He did not say anything more and turned to walk out. Lian Xiao smiled and said, "Son-in-law and young madam's relationship is really good. What's that saying, only a pair of mandarin ducks are envied, not immortals. I see that the books sold in the bookstore are not necessarily such a match made in heaven. It's just that it depends on your plans. Your arrangements in the court have always been tight, and they have always been offensive. But these days, they have slowed down. After all, it can't be that Xian Li made you change your mind. I know that you are a child with ideas. Once you have decided on something in your heart, you will continue to do it. I think that in this life, from the beginning, your goal has been that position." Jiang Wan paused before continuing, "And a few days ago, Xian Li's subordinates killed Eunuch Li. No matter how I think about it, it was because of the Imperial Edict. But if the Imperial Edict was to appoint you as the Crown Prince, why would you be so restless? Xian Pei was startled and looked at Jiang Yuan, somewhat at a loss. With just one look, he knew that he could no longer hide the news he wanted to hide. He said unhappily, "How did Imperial Mother know?" Just as he was thinking, housekeeper Lin walked in with a pile of account books in his hand. Seeing that Jiang Yuan and the others were about to leave, he was startled and asked, "Is young madam leaving the Fu?" Jiang Yuan and Empress Dowager Ida spoke for a while before they arrived at Xian Pei's palace. Now, the entire court knew that Jiang Yuan and Xian Pei had deep feelings for each other. How could a half-grown brother and sister have any feelings for each other? Everyone could only see that Jiang Yuan was representing Jining Wang Fu and standing on Xian Pei's side. Today, when she entered the palace to go to Nanyuan, there were bound to be many eyes watching her in the dark. Jiang Yuan knew that this was exactly what she wanted to achieve. After thinking about it, it seemed that this was the only thing that matched her conjecture. The Xian family's empire could not be seized by outsiders, and the emperor had appointed Xiao Xiao. It could only be said that Xiao Xiao was also of royal blood. But how did Xiao Xiao become the emperor's illegitimate child? Could it be that Jining Wang Fei and the emperor? Xian Pei was thinking a little too far. Unexpectedly, Jiang Yuan patted his head. She had probably guessed what Xian Pei was thinking. She was both angry and amused as she said, "It's not what you think, don't let your imagination run wild." Xian Pei looked at Jiang Ruan's gaze. In his previous life, Jiang Yuan had always looked at him tenderly. Her gaze was unhesitatingly protective and loving. Now, the woman in front of him had been reborn in this life and was no longer as weak as before. She treated others warmly and coldly, but only when facing him was she as gentle as ever. Even though at this moment, this gentleness still contained a bit of sternness, Xian Pei knew that he could not lie to Jiang Yuan. There were many eyes and ears in the palace. To say these words in such a dignified manner was really too daring. But Jiang Yuan was not worried. This was because Xian Pei was no longer the stupid and ignorant Xian Pei of his previous life. The defense of this Nan Yuan could be said to be watertight. After Jiang Yuan finished speaking, she stared closely at Xian Pei's eyes. The Tianzhu people, who were already very perceptive, turned their heads away at the same time and seemed to be snickering. Jiang Yuan was helpless, but Xiao Xiao touched her head and said, "Come back early. I have nothing to do today, so I came back early. We can go out for a walk." But Jiang Yuan only casually replied with a yes, and did not even say a word of denial. Xian Pei looked at her in confusion and said, "Imperial Mother, aren't you angry?" Housekeeper Lin complied, but Lu Zhu looked at Housekeeper Lin in a daze, as if thinking about something. After a moment, she suddenly clapped her hands and laughed, "I was just wondering why you looked different today. Housekeeper Lin seems to be much younger, even the wrinkles on your face are lighter, and you seem to be whiter. Did Housekeeper Lin put on rouge?" As Lu Zhu spoke, she wanted to pinch Housekeeper Lin's face. "Which shop did you buy this rouge from? It's so good. Oh, by the way, could it be that Housekeeper Lin has taken a fancy to some older sister? Is that why you dressed up like this? Hey, if you like her, how about I speak on your behalf? You." He paused and did not say anything. Jiang Yuan herself was not short, but in front of Xiao Xiao, she seemed exceptionally petite. She raised her head and had to slightly tiptoe to reach Xiao Xiao's collar. Xiao Xiao lowered his eyes to look at her. She appeared to be extremely serious, so Xiao Xiao's expression gradually softened, and his gaze overflowed with a gentleness that even he himself was not aware of. "It's Mushiro." Xian Pei said, "The imperial edict is with her. Imperial father trusts her and hid the imperial edict by her side so that it would not arouse suspicion." Now, Xian Pei was saying that Mushiro was his person. Jiang Yuan smiled slightly. Everyone in Xian Pei's palace hall was on their side, but it was really somewhat of an eyesore. Xian Pei waved his hand to let everyone leave. Jiang Wan also let Lian Qiao and the others stand guard outside the door, while she sat down with Xian Pei. No wonder in her previous life, Xian Li also wanted to poison people. At that time, Xian Li clearly had no one in the court who could block his position, but the emperor still did not reveal any intention of making him the crown prince. The reason was none other than Xiao Xiao. And Xian Li had sensed the emperor's intentions and knew that the emperor had no intention of making him the crown prince. However, he did not know the reason, so he slaughtered his own brothers, and then before the emperor could announce the imperial edict, he mercilessly killed them. This move was clean, and the ascension to the throne was a matter of course. There was not the slightest bit of bad rumors. For example, at this moment, Jiang Wan was somewhat dazed as she looked at Xiao Xiao, who was very close to her. She did not see that the youth's eyes seemed to flash with craftiness. Immediately after, Xiao Xiao lowered his head and lightly pecked the corner of her mouth. The next morning, Jiang Wan woke up very early. Seeing her like this, Xiao Xiao asked in puzzlement, "Why don't you sleep more?" Xian Pei was slightly startled, then he immediately lowered his head and clenched his teeth. "Imperial Mother. I want to be the emperor." Xian Pei was somewhat happy. He had also not seen Jiang Wan for a long time. Now that he saw Jiang Wan, he was naturally very happy and asked without thinking, "Imperial Mother, why didn't you come to see me?" Recently, the palace has been very lively, and every day there is something interesting to watch. I thought that Imperial Mother would definitely take the opportunity to see me, but in the end, after waiting for so long, there was no one. On the other hand, that Jinying Wang would occasionally enter the palace uninvited. My Nanyuan is not a place where people can casually step into. Towards the end, there was already a hint of anger in her tone, obviously extremely dissatisfied with Xiao Xiao. Xian Pei and Xiao Xiao were really a pair of enemies. Jiang Wan also did not know why Xian Pei would be so picky towards Xiao Xiao, but she only thought that he had the temperament of a child, so she smiled and said, "Rashly entering the palace will only bring you trouble. After His Majesty's serious illness, presumably you are not living well. He did not find trouble with you, right? You don't have to worry." Jiang Wan stroked his head. "Xiao Xiao has no intention of becoming the emperor. This position still belongs to you. I will help you, and Jinying Wang Fu will also stand behind you." This was a promise. Xian Pei was silent for a while before he said, "Imperial Mother, I am sorry, I did not deliberately hide it from you, but I do not know what to do." His heart was somewhat complicated. Xiao Xiao was the emperor, and Jiang Wan was bound to be the empress. This was naturally also very good, but Xian Pei's heart gave birth to a trace of unwillingness. He could not say why, but the thing that he had worked so hard for so long, in the end, had to be handed over to someone else. And he, who had sworn to protect Jiang Wan, could only watch Jiang Wan be protected by someone else in the end. Moreover, Xian Pei did not trust Xiao Xiao at all. If Xiao Xiao held power, what would happen if he did not treat Jiang Wan well? All kinds of thoughts intertwined in Xian Pei's heart, and only then did Jiang Wan see the clues. Lu Zhu also smiled, but as she smiled, she became somewhat perplexed. Thinking about the matter between herself and Jean Eyre, she felt a headache. Jean Eyre had already explained the matter to her, and he had also apologized to her. The anger in Lu Zhu's heart had long dissipated. She was not an unreasonable person. For Lu Zhu, Jiang Wan would always be the first, and she had absolute loyalty to her master. Therefore, since Jean Eyre was doing this for the entire Jinying Wang Fu, and also for Jiang Wan, she naturally had no complaints. Lu Zhu was broad-minded and had never been entangled in this matter. It was just that Jean Eyre, her gaze was somewhat gloomy. It was as if she could not get over the hurdle in her heart, as if there was always a barrier between them, and she was unwilling to say it out loud. However, what he did not expect was that the emperor did not want to appoint any of his sons as the future heir apparent. His gaze had always been on Xiao Xiao. Therefore, After Xianli ascended the throne, Xiao Xiao returned to the palace, and the prepared ministers took out the imperial edict. Xiao Xiao removed the traitor, proved his identity, and unified the country. That's right, but Imperial Mother was only half right. Xian Pei said in a low voice, Imperial Father's imperial edict did indeed clearly state that I would be appointed as the crown prince, but... Xian Pei clenched his teeth. He issued 2 imperial edicts. Jiang Wan tidied herself up, and as soon as she raised her head, she saw Xiao Xiao's gaze fixated on her. This youth's eyes were naturally good, and they were extremely deep and bright. His gaze was like ice, and his countenance was usually very indifferent. However, when he looked at someone carefully, he felt that he was so beautiful that it made people dizzy. It was as if all the romance in the world was reflected in his eyes, which were as gentle as the autumn waters. Beauty bewitched people. Even though this person was the person who slept by her side, there were times when Jiang Wan would become absent-minded. She often thought that there was probably nothing in this world that Xiao Xiao could not do, as long as he was willing to use a honey trap. Make a trip to the palace to see Pei. Jiang Wan said, these few days, he must not have had an easy time. There are some things that I still need to discuss with him. Chapter 240. After Tianzhu said this, she could not care about anything else, but she could not let Dewdrop fall. She could only help Lian Qiao to the side, where she saw Lian Qiao lying on the ground with a ghastly knife wound on her chest. The blood must have flowed from Lian Qiao's body. Dewdrop still had some consciousness, but when she saw this scene, she was shocked and afraid. She was shocked that Lian Qiao was seriously injured and did not know how her injuries were. She was afraid that Jiang Wan had disappeared. She wanted to call out Jiang Ruan's name weakly, but was stopped by Tianzhu, who said, "Don't shout, we have fallen into a trap." Dewdrop was not stupid. After thinking about it, she understood. These assassins in the crowd suddenly shouted to kill the unarmed people. Could it be that it was just a diversion, and the main purpose was to kidnap Jiang Wan? Thinking of this, Dewdrop felt a lingering fear. She had lost a lot of blood, and at this moment, her face was even paler. She said, "Young madam is in danger. Tianzhu, what should we do?" Tianzhu looked around. The surrounding people were still fleeing in all directions. She suddenly noticed something. She saw that the few small wooden boxes that Empress Dowager Ida had given her at the back of the carriage had all disappeared. She suddenly realized something and said in a low voice, "So young madam did it on purpose." "What did you say?" Dewdrop's voice became softer and softer. Seeing this, Tianzhu could no longer care about anything else. At this moment, one was unconscious and the other was seriously injured. Although Jiang Wan was also very nervous, if something happened to Dewdrop and Lian Qiao, it would be a waste of Jiang Ruan's painstaking efforts. Since Jiang Wan could think of this situation, she must have a way to deal with it. After following Jiang Wan for so long, Tianzhu more or less understood Jiang Ruan's temperament. She immediately took out a signal firework from her bosom. It was just that it was still early, so the firework was not obvious enough. However, it was enough for the nearby brocade guards to see it and come over to help. Housekeeper Lin was in the Fu calculating the household's expenses for this month. Thinking that the new year had just passed, the Fu seemed to have not purchased any new things. Even if there was a turbulent undercurrent in the capital of the Great Jin dynasty, the things that should be purchased could not be missing. Steward Lin was still pondering when he suddenly heard a panicked voice, "Steward Lin, bad news." Butler Lin raised his head and saw that it was one of the servants in the gatehouse. He reprimanded him, "Why are you so flustered? I've already told you that we're a prince's residence, so we need to have the bearing of a prince's residence. Don't be like a petty family, making a fuss and ruining the young master's reputation." "Oh no, Butler Lin. Young madam had been kidnapped. Lian Qiao and sister Lu Zhu are both injured. Sister Tianzhu just came back and is looking everywhere for young divine Dr. Xia. The waiter finally ran up to him and spilled everything without stopping. Only after he finished did he let out a long sigh of relief. Before she could react, she saw Steward Lin, who was sitting at the table and stroking his beard, suddenly jump up from his seat. His voice almost resounded through the entire Wang Fu. What? Where is it? Bring me there quickly. The news that Jiang Yuan had been kidnapped and that Lian Xiao and Lu Zhu were seriously injured and unconscious had spread throughout the entire Jining Wang Fu in a short period of time. Today's chaos on the streets had come suddenly. They had thought that it was a sudden attack by thugs, but they had not expected that the real target was actually Jiang Yuan. Those people were ferocious. Who knew what they would do to Jiang Yuan? Xiao Xiao had yet to return, but Yi Feng had already sent a signal to the genie guards, who were hiding in various places in the capital, to track down Jiang Yuan's whereabouts. However, at present, the capital's governor had also just arrived. When he learned of the matter of Jiang Yuan being kidnapped, he was naturally quite frightened. As a local public security officer, a thug had actually injured someone right under his nose. What was even more excessive was that this thug had even kidnapped Jining Wangfei. What kind of status did Jiang Yuan have? Not to mention the fact that Jining Wang Fu was supporting her from behind, even the General Fu, who was protective of their own people, was not someone he could afford to offend. Naturally, he did not hesitate to immediately send people to investigate. In this way, the capital became even more chaotic. The common people were also panic-stricken, and the streets were in a mess. Jiang Xing was in the Grand Council dealing with official business when he heard his subordinate soldier come forward and report, "General Jiang, the front line just received an urgent order." He was somewhat hesitant and his tone suddenly paused. Everyone knew that this young general was the most protective of his own people. Before Jiang Yuan was married, he had already been extremely protective of her. If he were to hear this news later, how scary would it be? Jiang Xing glanced at him and said in a low tone, "What's the matter?" The longer he stayed in the Grand Council, the more imposing and domineering Jiang Xing carried as a general of a country, the more he became. His former scholarly elegance had now been honed to become more resolute, and he gave off a feeling of power without being angry. When the soldier heard this, his body trembled and he immediately said, "Today at dusk, Jining Princess was kidnapped by thugs on the streets of the western part of the city. Until now, her whereabouts are unknown." As soon as he finished speaking, he saw the calm and resolute young general stand up abruptly. His expression changed greatly in an instant, and his voice trembled imperceptibly. "What did you say?" The soldier was still hesitating whether or not to repeat what he had just said to Jiang Xing when he felt a gust of wind on his face. Jiang Xing had already walked out of the camp in 2 or 3 steps. Ignoring the startled gazes of the new recruits who were training behind him, he leapt onto his horse and spurted away. The soldier stared blankly at him, and a new recruit at the side came over and asked curiously, "What's wrong with the general? Why are you in such a hurry?" "The general's younger sister has been kidnapped," the soldier answered. At the same time, in the southern courtyard of the palace, Xian Pei stood in front of the window. He did not know why, but since Jiang Yuan had left, his heart had not calmed down. Instead, it seemed to have become even more uneasy, as if something was about to happen. The morning sun stood quietly behind him, and Xian Pei tugged at the lapel of his clothes with some irritation. Even the slightly cool wind blowing against his face could not soothe the irritation in his heart. Why was this so? Usually, as long as he saw Jiang Yuan once, he would be very happy for many days in a row. Because of this, he could also calm his heart. But recently, he did not know why, but he kept feeling a little strange. Instead, he was becoming more and more irritable. After thinking about it, he probably still felt that Jiang Yuan's words and actions today were also somewhat wrong. Xian Pei thought hard. Today, Jiang Yuan had uncharacteristically instructed him on what to do. She said that before making a decision, he should discuss it with Xiao Xiao. But why did she not discuss it with her? If she was here, why did she want him to get along with Xiao Xiao? Xian Pei sensitively felt that there was something wrong here. Could it be that Jiang Wan already knew what decision he would make next? She was not here, so she let Xiao Xiao do it for her. Why was she not here? The imperial edict was now in Jiang Ruan's hands. Jiang Wan said that Jining Wang Fu was the best place to protect the imperial edict, and that it was enough to attract all of Xian Li's attention. Of course, it was good to attract Xian Li's attention. But now, the imperial edict was still in Jiang Ruan's hands. Xian Pei's eyes suddenly widened, and almost immediately, he thought of the crucial point. Wrong, there was something wrong here. He and Jiang Wan had been mother and son for 2 lifetimes. Although they were not related by blood, they generally had some mental connection. Almost in the blink of an eye, Xian Pei thought of Jiang Ruan's plan. He slapped the window eaves and shouted in a low voice, "Oh no!" At the same time, Mingyu ran in from outside and said somewhat urgently, "Your Highness, on the way back to the Fu, the princess was attacked by thugs. In the chaos, she was kidnapped and her whereabouts are still unknown." Xian Pei closed his eyes and said in a low voice, "As expected." That day, many people in the capital were able to sleep peacefully. At dusk, the chaos had already caused people to panic, and the news that Jining Princess had been kidnapped spread like wildfire. The entire capital was discussing this matter. Among them, there were those who lamented for Jiang Ruan. A good princess, once she was kidnapped, her innocence would not be clear. However, there were also those who were secretly pleased with themselves. In this world, there was always no lack of jealousy. Since ancient times, there was no shortage of people who hit someone when they were down. The lights in Jining Wangfu were brightly lit throughout the night. The servants did not dare to breathe too loudly. Everyone had a solemn and worried expression on their faces. Their young madam had been kidnapped and they did not know what was going on. For the servants, this was also a kind of torment. However, no matter how tormented they were, it could not be compared to the torment of their own master. The lights in the study were the same as in the past. However, in the past, it was Jiang Ruan who sat inside reading and writing, waiting for Xiao Xiao to return. Today, however, Xiao Xiao was sitting inside, waiting for someone who could not return for the time being. Housekeeper Lin stood to one side. Under the illumination of the lights, his facial features seemed to have strangely become younger by a few years, and he actually appeared to be a bit more distinguished. However, at this moment, no one noticed this. Housekeeper Lin looked at Xiao Xiao, who was sitting at the desk, thinking about something. He consoled him, "Master, you should rest early. If young madam was here, she would not have a good time." However, Xiao Xiao seemed to have not heard his words and silently looked at the teacup in front of him. Housekeeper Lin sighed softly. He knew that Xiao Xiao wouldn't listen to anything he said. Ever since he had received the news that Jiang Wan had been kidnapped, he had personally led the brocade guards and Jiang Xing to search the entire capital. They had barricaded the city gates and interrogated every household one by one, but to no avail. How could Xiao Xiao give up? Housekeeper Lin looked at the handsome young man sitting at the table, and his gaze instantly became somewhat dazed. In his daze, he actually saw the appearance of Crown Prince Hongxi when he found out that Xiang Xiaoyuan had left. At that time, Crown Prince Hongxi also sat silently at the table, looking at the letter that Xiang Xiaoyuan had once written. He sat there for an entire night. Perhaps this was the relationship between father and son. Who said that since ancient times, the royal family was heartless? Xiao Xiao and Crown Prince Hongxi were truly affectionate. Extreme wisdom will be hurt, and deep love will not last long. Housekeeper Lin could not tell if this was a good or bad thing. However, Xiao Xiao really didn't need any consolation. He just wanted to sit quietly by himself. Butler Lin didn't try to persuade him anymore. He slowly retreated and gently closed the door. Then, he instructed the 2 guards at the door. He then went to the kitchen to watch over the decoction for Lian Xiao and Lu Zhu. Xiao Xiao sat at the desk. The soft light could not melt the indifference in his expression. That kind of alienation and coldness that pushed people 1,000 miles away almost brought him back to a long time ago, when he had just taken over the brocade guards. Cruel, bloodthirsty, indifferent, heartless. Now, there was a person who had warmed his heart, but then suddenly disappeared. In his heart, there was only regret towards himself. What appeared in his mind was the scene of Jiang Ruan standing on her tiptoes this morning to tidy up his collar. He had said that when he came back at night, they would take a walk, and Jiang Ruan had agreed. But when he came back at night, she was no longer there. This was a premeditated plot by the other party to create a diversion, but the one who had orchestrated all of this was Jiang Ruan herself. Xiao Xiao lowered his eyes. When he heard the ins and outs of the matter from Tianzhu, he understood Jiang Ruan's plan. She had long planned to use him as bait to lure Xian Li's people out. She had already planned everything. Even this morning, she had clearly realized that something might have happened at dusk. Yet, she had still pretended as if nothing had happened and said goodbye to him tenderly. It was simply. Xiao Xiao's face was ashen as he clenched his fists. She had gone too far. Nonsense. She was too reckless. She did not have the self-awareness of being a wife. She did not put her husband in her eyes at all. Many thoughts flashed through Xiao Xiao's mind in an instant, but in the end, what remained was heartache and guilt. He felt heartache that she always had to put herself in danger for these things. He felt guilty that as her husband, he did not even realize these things. He had promised to protect her for a lifetime, but he still did not do it. He closed his eyes, and his long eyelashes formed a beautiful shadow. As they trembled slightly, he actually looked a little tired. At this moment, the door was suddenly pushed open. He suddenly opened his eyes, and his gaze was like a sword as he looked at the door, but he saw Qi Feng walking in. "What's the matter?" He sat up straight. He was not in a good mood today. His tone was inevitably a little harsh to Qi Feng. Qi Feng did not care about his expression. Because of his special relationship with Xiao Xiao, the guards at the door did not stop him. He walked in and sat down opposite Xiao Xiao's desk. He poured himself a cup of tea, and then met Xiao Xiao's cold eyes. He said calmly, "I am here to talk to you about third sister-in-law." Xiao Xiao's expression changed, and his eyes suddenly shot sharply at him. He said coldly, "You already knew." "Yes." After Qi Feng said this, he felt that Xiao Xiao's eyes were even more unkind, as if he wanted to swallow him alive. As a senior in the same sect, it was not that he had never seen Xiao Xiao's terrible appearance. But even when it came to killing, Xiao Xiao was always cold and unwilling to show a trace of emotion. But now, he did not hide his displeasure towards him, which suddenly made Qi Feng feel great pressure. He smiled bitterly and said, "In fact, before this, third sister-in-law came to me once to discuss this matter." Xiao Xiao did not speak and just looked at him coldly. Qi Feng continued to say, "Third sister-in-law has long wanted to use this matter to draw out the movements of Xianli and the southern border. But her most important purpose is for the 13th prince in the palace. Only in this way, Xianli will put all his attention on her. He thought that with the fake imperial edict, he will relax the surveillance of the 13th prince in the palace. In this way, the 13th prince will be much safer and also by some time." After a pause, Qi Feng continued, "I have asked third sister-in-law that the fake imperial edict is too risky. If it is discovered, it will be a big crime. But third sister-in-law said that she has the real imperial edict, but it is not that one. I don't know what is wrong. Third sister-in-law seems to be unwilling to tell me more, but from her solemn appearance, there should be no problem. Although this plan is risky, it is indeed the best way. In this way, things will be simplified. Xianli has unknowingly fallen into the trap." Xiao Xiao was slightly startled, not because of the discussion between Jiang Ruan and Qi Feng, but because of the key point in Qi Feng's words. Qi Feng said that the fake imperial edict that Jiang Ruan found was not fake. To hide from Xian Li's people, a simple fake imperial edict was indeed impossible, but Jiang Ruan did not tell Qi Feng the reason. If she really discussed this matter with Qi Feng to this point, naturally there was nothing to hide. Unless the matter was of great importance, it really could not be told to Qi Feng. As for what it was, Xiao Xiao already had the answer in his heart, his life. In this way, the contents of the imperial edict were also clear. It must be the imperial edict that made him the heir apparent. The emperor had always wanted him to sit in that position. Xiao Xiao knew that he had always clearly expressed that he had no desire for the throne. The emperor was a stubborn person and had not given up for so many years. However, Xiao Xiao did not expect that the emperor would not hesitate to use his own life to force him to succeed the throne, and even hid an imperial edict. This imperial edict was a hot potato for Xiao Xiao. Once it was discovered, his life would be exposed, which was the last thing he wanted to see. To stay away from the royal family and the undercurrents of the court, this was what the old Jinying Wang had always hoped that he could do. Even if the old Jinying Wang and he were not biological father and son, Xiao Xiao had never forgotten this advice. For so many years, he had dealt with the southern frontier, walked on the edge of danger, and left the capital from time to time in order not to get involved in the quarrels of the court. He liked to kill, but did not like sinister arrows in the dark. Jiang Ruan knew that he did not want to be the emperor. She made such a decision, on the one hand, to divert Xian Li's attention from Xian Pei, and on the other hand, it was for him. In order to let him have no worries and to eliminate future troubles, this imperial edict was broken in the hands of Xian Li. This was the decision she made on his behalf. No wonder, that night, Jiang Ruan asked him, "Do you want to be the emperor?" So this was what she meant. She had long known that the emperor had written an imperial edict for him. She was helping him solve these troubles in her own way. All along, everyone seemed to think that Jiang Ruan's temperament was cold, warm on the outside but cold on the inside. Compared to Xiao Xiao after he got married, Jiang Ruan was still the same as before. But Xiao Xiao knew that she was just not good at expressing herself. For example, at this moment, she was using her own way to silently contribute. Seeing Xiao Xiao's thoughtful expression and the changing expression in his eyes, Qi Feng could not help but feel bitter. He cleared his throat and said, "The reason why third sister-in-law came to me is because she knew that you would not agree to let her take the risk. Instead of letting you be on guard, it is better to make the first move." The news that Xian Li's subordinates in the palace got was deliberately leaked to them by me. Xiao Xiao glanced at him and did not speak. He got up and was about to go out. Qi Feng also stood up and grabbed him. "What are you doing? Let go." Xiao Xiao pulled out his sleeve. Qi Feng pressed his shoulder. "Are you going to order the genie guards again? Don't go." Xiao Xiao looked at him coldly. Qi Feng hurriedly said, "Think clearly, why does third sister-in-law want to do this? Isn't it all because of you that she is in danger? If you really order the genie guards now, third sister-in-law will be rescued, but her painstaking efforts will be in vain. Instead, Xian Li will be on guard. In this way, the loss outweighs the gain." When he saw that Xiao Xiao did not answer, he breathed a sigh of relief and continued, "I know that you are feeling indignant now, I also. I can understand, but you have to calm down. Now that third sister-in-law is not here, only you can continue her plan. If you are in a mess, Jinying Wangfu will also be in a mess. How can third sister-in-law not be angry when she sees this?" He finished speaking in one breath, only to find that his emotions were a little too agitated. For a moment, he was a little embarrassed. Anyone with a discerning eye could see through Jiang Ruan's thoughts. Although he did not do anything excessive and tried his best to be a gentleman in his relationship with Jiang Ruan, every time he met Xiao Xiao's indifferent eyes, he felt a little guilty and short of breath. Xiao Xiao clearly did not say anything, nor did he do anything. Qi Feng could still feel that Xiao Xiao was very dissatisfied with Jiang Ruan being close to him. This indifferent man had a strong possessiveness in his bones, which made people unable to even think about it in their hearts. Xiao Xiao looked at him again. There was no emotion in his dark eyes. He said lightly, "I am going to rest." After that, he did not look at Qi Feng again and walked out. Qi Feng was thrown to the ground and was stunned for a long time. Then he touched his nose and smiled bitterly. Xiao Xiao had no tolerance. He was really unhappy in his heart. Wasn't it a bit childish to vent his dissatisfaction in this way? Xiao Xiao turned his back to Qi Feng and walked into the house. His heart gradually calmed down. He knew that what Qi Feng said was right. Although he was distressed, he should respect it. Seizing this opportunity created by Jiang Ruan's own safety and giving Xianli a hard blow was the best way to not waste her painstaking achievements. She had confidence in herself, so he should also have confidence in her. But, thinking of Qi Feng's words just now, Xiao Xiao's eyes sank again. Why was Jiang Ruan so close to Qi Feng all day? That boy Qi Feng did not have good intentions. It was annoying to look at him all day long. He did not know what caught Jiang Ruan's eyes. If she really wanted to discuss it, she could have discussed it with Xia Qing. Moreover, why was she so sure that he would not agree to her idea? He had always been very reasonable. Xiao Xiao had completely forgotten that Xia Qing was a straightforward person. It was impossible for her to come up with any good ideas with Jiang Ruan. As for him, he would put Jiang Ruan's safety first. The only one who could stand in a fair position and look at this matter reasonably was Qi Feng. However, Xiao Xiao did not feel good about looking at Qi Feng. He was also somewhat unhappy that Jiang Ruan had made this decision on her own. In his heart, he secretly decided that when Jiang Ruan returned, he would definitely punish her properly to strengthen his authority as a husband. Chapter 241. When Jiang Ruan woke up, the sky was already dark. This was not a spacious room, and it looked a little old, as if it had not been occupied often. A young maidservant stood beside her, adding food to the table. Seeing that she had woken up, she quietly put the food on the table faster, then immediately grabbed her things and ran out. Jiang Ruan did not chase after her, and she did not know how long she had slept. Things seemed to be going more smoothly than she had imagined. At that time, taking advantage of the chaos, when she was rescuing Lu Zhu and Tian Zhu, a few people suddenly swarmed up and snatched away Empress Dowager Yida's reward. She was also knocked unconscious and taken away. She had probably been drugged, so she had only just woken up. Jiang Ruan lowered her eyes. When she was taken away, she saw with her own eyes that Lian Xiao had been stabbed. She did not know how her injury was now. She was afraid that the capital had been turned upside down. She also did not know where she was, but until now, no one had come looking for her. Whether it was Xiao Xiao's brocade guards, Jiang Xianji's people, or the capital governor, it could only mean that the place she was staying in was extremely hidden. And such a hidden place could not be found by the holy maiden of the southern border. Xianli was cunning and would not do it himself, so naturally, it could only be the work of the previous dynasty's southern princess. Qiman Jiang Ruan walked to the window, opened it, and looked out. It was dark outside, and it seemed very quiet, as if she had already left the wilderness 100 miles away from the capital. There was a different kind of tranquility. Jiang Ruan did not attempt to walk out. She believed that as long as she stepped out of the door, there would inevitably be at least 10 experts blocking her path. This was nothing more than a house arrest. It was precisely Xian Li's arrangement and Qi Man's execution. What was she going to do now? She did not need to do anything, she just had to wait. Jiang Ruan felt a little hungry. Since entering the palace today, she had not eaten anything, and now that she had slept for a long time, she was already very tired. She walked to the table and sat down. There were a few plates of porridge and side dishes on the table, and they were not considered luxurious. Jiang Wan picked up the bowl and slowly began to eat. Xianli still wanted to use her as a bargaining chip to make a deal with Xiao Xiao, so naturally, he would not make things difficult for her. The food was certainly not poisonous. After eating 2 mouthfuls, Jiang Wan suddenly felt a wave of nausea rise up from her stomach to her throat. This feeling came so suddenly that she was caught off guard. She immediately flung her chopsticks and retched. Just as she started to retch, she heard a peng sound as the door was slammed open from the outside. The maid-like woman from before rushed in with a nervous expression on her face. Perhaps she was afraid that Jiang Wan was up to something, for at this moment, she stood to one side, vigilantly and hesitantly looking at Jiang Wan without saying a word. In her heart, Jiang Wan understood. Presumably, before Xianli had sent people to serve her, he must have instructed them to emphasize how cunning she was. Therefore, in the eyes of this maidservant, she must have thought that she was thinking of a way to escape. However, at this moment, Jiang Wan did not have the slightest bit of such thoughts. She had a vague conjecture in her heart, but she did not show it on her face. She only deliberately took out a handkerchief from her bosom and lightly wiped the corner of her mouth. She said faintly, "This food is really not to my taste." The maidservant stared blankly and still did not speak. Jiang Wan was startled. Could it be that, in order to be absolutely safe, Xianli had actually sent a mute? She said, "Go and make another table. If your master knows, he will not refuse." The maidservant hesitated for a moment before turning around and leaving. After the maidservant left, Jiang Wan suppressed the feeling of nausea in her heart. Unhurriedly, she walked to the bedside and sat down. She stroked her forehead and pretended to be somewhat tired. There were spies hiding in the dark both inside and outside the room. If she was the slightest bit careless, she would be caught. At this moment, Jiang Wan leaned against the cushion on the soft couch, but it was difficult for her to conceal the horror in her heart. The nausea in her stomach was not unfounded. Almost at the same time, a thought flashed through her mind. Could it be that she was pregnant? A few days ago, her taste had become somewhat strange. She somewhat liked to eat sour things, but she did not feel any nausea. She had thought that it was only because of the beginning of spring that her appetite was not good. Who knew that today's actions almost caused her heart to tighten? Even if at this moment she could not determine whether it was true or not, as long as there was a 1 in 10,000 possibility, it was enough to start making her feel uneasy. How could this be? No matter how much Jiang Wan calculated, she did not expect that she might be pregnant at this time. The reason she had made this plan was based on the calculation that she was a bargaining chip. Xianli would inevitably protect her and keep her safe for the time being. And in order to provoke discord between Xianli and the southern frontier, the key to this elimination was the holy maiden of the southern frontier. But if she knew that she was pregnant, any woman would not be indifferent to the fact that the man she loved had another person's child. In particular, the holy maiden's possessiveness had already reached a perverse level. If she knew of this news, even her last trace of apprehension and rationality would inevitably be annihilated. Jiang Wan was not afraid of death. Even in the face of danger, how could a person who had died once easily feel fear? But in her previous life, the tragic state of before her death was still a nightmare even in this life. How could she let such a tragedy happen again? Jiang Ruan's heart tightened. For the first time, she felt vexed with her own decision. If she had found out about the condition of her body earlier, she would certainly not have made this decision so rashly. This child had come into this world under her and Xiao Xiao's expectations. But why did it have to be at this time, when danger was lurking on all sides and killing intent was everywhere? She closed her eyes, and when she opened them again, Jiang Ruan's gaze had become firm and resolute. Since things had already come to this, self-pity were of no use. It was better to act according to the circumstances. Her hands slowly stroked her lower abdomen, as if a new life had really been born there. Jiang Ruan looked at her hand. A warm feeling came over her, and her gaze gradually began to soften. If there was really a child here, even if she had to risk everything, she would protect it from harm. But what kind of child would it be? Would it be a boy or a girl? Would it look like Xiao Xiao or would it look like her? Jiang Ruan's heart was somewhat complicated. It was a special feeling that was mixed with anticipation and worry. In the end, the anticipation finally won over the worry. She opened her mouth and silently said to the little life that she did not know whether it existed or not, "You accompany mother, and mother will also accompany you." Naturally, Jiang Ruan's situation did not reach the ears of the anxious people in the capital. In the past few days, everyone who had a relationship with Jinying Wangfu had come to express their condolences. In the general's residence, Lady Li had already fallen ill from anxiety. Zhao Guang also wished he could flip the entire capital upside down. The few sons and young masters of the general's residence also used their own abilities to search for her. Unfortunately, they all returned empty-handed. Even the carefree Guan Lianghan had come to Jinying Wangfu for a few days, wanting to comfort Xiao Xiao. "Lao San, don't be too sad." Guan Lianghan patted Xiao Xiao's shoulder. He was a boorish person and did not know how to comfort him. He scratched his head and could only say, "You see, sister-in-law is not a person who can be easily bullied." In the past, those who went against her, who ended up with a good ending. Perhaps this time, it was also part of her calculations. The mastermind behind this was tricked by someone, and we still don't know what happened. Guan Lianghan said this unintentionally, but Qi Feng's heart almost jumped when he heard it. If he did not know that this matter was very confidential, Jiang Ruan and Xiao Xiao would not have told Guan Lianghan. He almost thought that Guan Lianghan also knew the truth. He glanced at the silent Xiao Xiao and sighed in his heart. How could he not understand Xiao Xiao's thoughts? He knew that it was one thing to believe in Jiang Ruan's ability, but doing it was another. No matter how much he believed in her, he could not help but worry. Mo Tsong looked around and asked strangely, "Why don't I see fifth brother?" "He is checking the injuries of third sister-in-law's two maidservants." Qi Feng said, "The two maidservants were seriously injured and almost could not be saved. Xia Wu has been busy with this these days. To be so vicious to two maidservants." Mo Tsong suddenly shut his mouth and swallowed the remaining words of, "I don't know how she will treat third sister-in-law," after seeing Xiao Xiao's expression. On the other hand, Mo Tsong was looking at Lu Zhu's injury again. He took her pulse and put her hand back under the quilt. He comforted Lu Zhu a few words and then walked out the door. As soon as he went out, he saw Jean Eyre waiting at the door. When he saw Mo Tsong come out, he anxiously asked, "How is her injury?" "It is much better." Mo Tsong said, "It was more serious a few days ago. Fortunately, Miss Lu Zhu has a persevering temperament and the foundation of her body is also good. Her injury has recovered very well. For the next few days, as long as she applies medicine and drinks medicine on time, and with careful nursing, her body will slowly get better. However, during this period of time, do not do any heavy work." Jean Eyre repeatedly agreed. Mo Tsong was about to leave when he suddenly thought of something and said, "Oh right, go in and apply medicine for her." Today, the two maidservants who applied medicine for her went to Miss Lian Xiao's place for acupuncture. They will not be able to do it in a short time. You are a martial artist and have good control of your strength. Since you are going to be husband and wife with her, you don't have to worry too much. Firstly, Mo Tsong usually lived in seclusion and did not pay much attention to the outside world. Therefore, he really did not know that Lu Zhu and Jean Eyre had a grudge because of Liao Meng. Secondly, people who were trained in the art of Qi Huang always looked down on such matters. They did not care much about physical intimacy, as long as their hearts were clean. After saying this, Mo Tsong did not feel that there was anything wrong with it. He carried his medicine box and walked towards Lian Xiao's room. Jean Eyre was stunned for a long time before he regained his senses. In the room, Lu Zhu was lying with her back facing the outside. These days, she had been lying in bed and was not worried about her injury. Instead, she was brooding over Jiang Ruan's disappearance. She always remembered that if she had not been injured at that time and Jiang Ruan had not asked Tian Zhu to come over to protect her, perhaps Jiang Ruan would not have been abducted. Lu Zhu's heart was full of self-blame. She thought that at that time, it would have been better if she had died. Lu Zhu did not dare to think about the consequences of Jiang Ruan being abducted by those vicious and evil people. Xiao Xiao did not blame her. Instead, he let Xia Qing treat her injury. The more he did this, the more Lu Zhu felt guilty. Sometimes, she thought that if Jiang Ruan really had met with some mishap, she would also have followed her. In any case, she would have completed a period of fate between master and servant. As her imagination ran wild, she suddenly heard the sound of someone pushing the door open behind her. Lu Zhu did not pay much attention to it. She thought that it was time to apply the medicine. It must be those servant girls who had come over to apply the medicine. Therefore, she did not turn around. She only heard the footsteps coming to the bedside. Then, Lu Zhu opened her mouth and said, "You have worked hard today. There is no need to make any preparations, just apply the medicine directly." However, the footsteps paused. Lu Zhu felt the bed sink a little. The person must have sat on the edge of the bed. She changed to a lying position so that it would be easier to apply the medicine. Immediately after, she felt a chill on her back. Her clothes had been lifted. Lu Zhu was not used to this chill. She felt that it was strange that this girl did not speak today. Could it be that something had happened? Then, she felt a hand caressing her scar. That pair of hands was different from the soft and tender hands of the girl who usually applied medicine. They were slender and slightly rough, as if they were calluses from years of martial arts practice. This was a pair of men's hands. Lu Zhu was startled. She suddenly turned her head and stared at the person in front of her. Jin Er was sitting in front of her. Seeing her movements, he was a little anxious. He hurriedly pressed her shoulder and said in a low voice, "Don't move. Be careful of your wound. Why are you here?" Lu Zhu was embarrassed and angry. She was embarrassed that this person had suddenly come without saying anything and even looked at her body. She was angry because... what was their relationship now? "I am here to apply the medicine." Jin Er picked up the ointment at the side and said softly, "Lian Xiao needs acupuncture. The maid applying the medicine has gone over. I will do it for her. Don't move. If it affects your wound, you will feel pain." So he was only here to replace her with the medicine. Lu Zhu could not tell if she was disappointed or something else. She was angry at her own thoughts. She ignored the injury on her back and sat up immediately. She pushed Jin Er out. "I don't want you to apply medicine for me. Get out." However, her movement was a little too big, and it really affected her wound. She felt a piercing pain, and Dewdrop took a deep breath, almost falling down. Jin Er was shocked. He grabbed her arm and pressed her into his arms. Although his movements were fast, he was careful not to touch Lu Zhu's wound. He said with a pained tone, "Be careful. The wound has not healed. Don't hurt yourself." Lu Zhu's heart ached. Even when she was on good terms with Jin Er, this person liked to bully her. When was he so gentle? But now, this gentleness seemed more like mockery. She sneered, "Jin Er, what do you mean? Is it fun to bully me like this?" Lu Zhu did not take Liao Meng's incident to heart. It was just a tactic. She was not an unreasonable person. People in this world pursue flawless relationships. But how could there be so many flawless relationships? If one had to take everything to heart, life would be very tiring. However, even though she did not take it to heart, Jin Er did. He did not show any intention of getting back together. Lu Zhu always wanted to give him time. The genie guards were usually very strict with themselves. But before that time could come, this incident happened. Lu Zhu. Jin Eyre saw that she was suddenly agitated. He could not care about anything else. He pressed her into his arms and buried her hand in front of his chest. He said hurriedly, "I am sorry, Lu Zhu. It is my fault. I am too weak. I thought that I am not worthy of you. I did not know how to face you. I thought I would just have to wait a little longer, but I didn't expect that God would never give people time to wait. That day, you came back drenched in blood. I felt like I wasn't myself anymore. I was so afraid of losing you. That day, I thought that if you weren't here, I wouldn't be able to live a good life." His lips pressed against Dewdrop's forehead, bringing with it a strange heat. "Fortunately, you are still here. It doesn't matter what you do. If you are angry, I will keep waiting for the day you forgive me. Dewdrop, I am sorry, don't be angry, okay? If you are angry, just hit me and scold me. Don't hurt yourself." Jin Eyre's words were clumsy and careful. He did not have any of his usual flowery words. He was not clumsy even when he was young. At this moment, it was all displayed in front of Lu Zhu. Jin Eyre knew that if his colleagues saw his clumsy appearance, they would laugh for 3 to 5 years. But he did not care. Because the words he said at this moment were all from the bottom of his heart. That day, when he saw Lu Zhu being carried back drenched in blood, Tianzhu only said that she had been stabbed. The amount of blood was a ghastly sight. Xia Qing's solemn expression also made Jin Eyre's hands and feet turn cold. He stood outside Lu Zhu's house and watched Xia Qing go in and busy herself for a few hours. During those hours, he did not think about anything else. He only thought about what he would do if something happened to Lu Zhu. A person would meet countless people in their lifetime. Among them, there were many people who liked someone. But the people who liked someone also happened to like them. How many people would be able to walk together in the end when two people were in love? It was easy to say that they would grow old together, but it was too difficult to do it. Moreover, one could encounter countless setbacks in the world. Why should one not cherish the present? Jin Eyre could not describe how he felt at this moment. He only felt that Lu Zhu was still alive and well. Perhaps this was the greatest fortune and kindness that the heavens had shown him. He suddenly felt that he had been very foolish in the past. Those so-called external objects and face, those unreasonable feelings of guilt and cowardice, were actually not worth mentioning. What could be more important than the two of them? Lu Zhu closed her eyes. In the past, she would have been very touched to hear these words. But now, she slowly pushed Jin Eyre's embrace away and forcefully forced back the tears in her eyes. She said, "What's the point of saying all this now? It's impossible for us to be together now." "Why?" Jin Eyre looked at her anxiously. "It's fine if you're angry. I don't expect you to forgive me immediately. It's none of your business." Lu Zhu composed herself and said, "You're the young master of the Huang family. Even if you follow the son-in-law, you're still a free person. I'm a servant girl who's still a slave. Our statuses don't match. Moreover," she was a little sad, "I still have that terrifying scar on my body. You can find a better girl. We're not suitable for each other. We're probably not fated to be together in this lifetime." For an unmarried girl, having a scar on her body was something that could not be tolerated. Even for a married girl, having a scar on her body was enough to be a reason for her to fall out of favor. Even if it was a scar on her back, it was enough to be considered as disfigurement. Who would be willing to see an ugly scar appear on an originally smooth and clean skin? Moreover, Lu Zhu's cut was extremely deep. After the wound healed, it would definitely leave a scar. This was what Xia Qing had said herself. Since the sacred hands of Jinling had said so, it meant that there was no room for negotiation. Jin Air did not expect that Lu Zhu would be brooding over this matter. He was stunned for a moment before he seemed to suddenly understand. He suddenly burst into laughter. Lu Zhu was slightly taken aback and looked at him with some anger. Jin Air coughed before he stroked her hair. Silly girl, I don't mind these things. Lu Zhu shook her head. Although you don't mind now, you'll mind one day. I don't want you to regret it in the future. If that happens, both of us will be ashamed. No matter how strong a girl was on the outside, when it came to the man she loved, she was always timid and unconfident. She hoped that she could be a little better, so that she could welcome the man she loved with her best and most beautiful appearance. This was something that could not be blamed. This was the principle of being timid when close to love. I won't regret it. Jin Air put away the smile on his face. He looked at Lu Zhu and said seriously, I know that I look unreliable. I always make you angry and I like to bully you. But Lu Zhu, since I was young, you're the first girl I've liked. I don't know how to say it, but when I see you angry and bully you every day, I feel that only then will you notice me and talk to me. The famous playboy of the gaming brothel had one day met a girl who did not spare a glance at him. What made him even more anxious was that he found out that he liked this girl. Naturally, he could only use some childish methods to attract her attention. He said, but what I like is you, not your appearance. Appearance will grow old one day. No matter how beautiful you are, it can't withstand the passage of time. Not to mention that this scar is on your back, even if it's on your face, you're still the most beautiful girl in my heart. As for what you said about a well-matched match, right now, we really aren't suitable. Why don't I ask Master for a favor and accept me as a servant of the Wang Fu? Lu Zhu was very touched when she heard the first part of his words, but when she heard the last part, she could not help but be shocked. She immediately raised her head to look at Jin Air. Are you crazy? What she saw was Jin Air's evil smile. She immediately understood that he was trying to scare her and said angrily, You're lying to me again. Be careful. Jin Air held her shoulders. Don't tear your wound. I'll help you apply medicine. If you want to hit me, come and hit me later. After I've applied the medicine and my body has recovered, I'll come to your room every day to let you hit me to your heart's content. This person was starting to have a glib tongue again. But this time, Lu Zhu did not argue with him. She only quietly turned around. Her face was still slightly red as she muttered, Lecher. But she could not refuse anymore. Jin Air felt fear in his heart because he was afraid of losing her. How could she not feel the same? At the moment of life and death, all kinds of past events flashed before her eyes. Suddenly, those grudges were not so important. Because only after losing something would one know how to cherish it, and life was originally something worth cherishing. As for those trivial matters, let nature take its course. In the palace, everyone sat with a solemn expression on their faces, minding their own business. Even the usually cheerful little eunuchs secretly had bitter expressions on their faces. They did not even dare to breathe loudly, for fear of offending their masters. Ever since the emperor fell ill, everything in the palace had not been smooth sailing. Disturbances came one after another. First, Eunuch Li had died, and now, Princess Jining had also disappeared. Although Princess Jining was a member of the Shao family, she had been bestowed the title of Junzhu by the royal family before she married. Moreover, she was the favorite of Empress Dowager Yi. Now that Jiang Yuan had gone missing, people from the General Fu would come to the palace every few days to discuss the matter with Empress Dowager Yi. Empress Dowager Yi was also unable to restrain her anger. She had also sent people to track down Jiang Ruan's whereabouts, but unfortunately, they had all returned with no results. Thinking of this, the little eunuch had another headache. Walking a few steps forward, he happened to see Eunuch Chen waving his horsetail whisk in front of him, ordering a few eunuchs to do some work. When he saw him, he asked, "Where are you going?" "The imperial kitchen has prepared some medicinal cuisine for Lady Xiao Yi. The little eunuch raised his face with a smile and spoke to Eunuch Chen in a somewhat fawning manner. Thus, it was said that one's fate could only be discovered by chance and not sought. Half a month ago, this Eunuch Chen was still a little eunuch who was no different from him and had the least status in the palace. He was clumsy and clumsy, always making mistakes. If it were not for Eunuch Li's backing, he would have died many times over. In the end, Eunuch Li died, and this Eunuch Chen took advantage of the situation to rise to the heavens. Because of his filial piety towards Eunuch Li, he was directly promoted by the current steward, Dong Xiu-yi. Empress Dowager Ida did not object. It would be a lie to say that she was not jealous, but the little eunuch was clear that he could not offend this person and could only curry favor with him. As he thought about it, he sighed in his heart. It was said that a new ruler brings a new court of ministers. Now that the emperor was seriously ill and Eunuch Li had died, with Eunuch Chen replaced, he did not know if the crown prince of the great Jin dynasty would also be replaced. As he was thinking, he heard Eunuch Chen's slightly shrill voice, "Go." The little eunuch hurriedly wiped his sweat and carried his things towards Dong Xiu-yi's bedroom. When he arrived at Dong Xiu-yi's bedroom, he did not see anyone, only a few palace maids. The little eunuch smiled and went forward to ask, "Jijie, is Lady Xiu-yi not here?" "Lady Xiu-yi has gone out." The palace maid saw the food basket in the little eunuch's hands and took it. "It's medicinal cuisine. Go back and tell Lady Xiu-yi." When the little eunuch heard this, he was somewhat unhappy. This task was something that he had fought hard to get from someone else. He even spent a silver hairpin just to show his face in front of Dong Xiu-yi. One had to know that from now on, the only person in charge of the palace was Dong Xiu-yi. If he could gain Dong Xiu-yi's favor, he might have the opportunity to climb up. However, it was impossible now. The little eunuch was disappointed, but he still smiled warmly on the surface. He said a few more words to the palace maid before leaving. At this moment, Dong Ying'er was in a long corridor in the palace. There was only her personal maid around her. Today, she was not the same as before. Because she was fully in charge of the emperor's affairs and Mu Shiro did not manage anything, if there was no Empress Dowager Ida in the inner palace, she could almost cover the sky with one hand. At this moment, her clothes were gorgeous and her makeup was exquisite. However, her mind was not on the matters of the inner palace. Her purpose had not changed from beginning to end. She came here only to wait for a person. After a moment, she saw a person hurriedly walking over from the other end of the long corridor. That person was in a hurry. Dong Ying'er smiled slightly and went up to greet him. "Long time no see, General Jiang." That person stopped and looked at her with a bit of confusion. It was as if he was trying to remember who this person was. Just this one glance caused Dong Ying'er's heart to feel pain. So in this person's heart, she was nothing, and she didn't even leave a mark on him. She bit her lips. Jiang Xing seemed to remember and nodded his head. "Dong Xiu-yi." His tone was restrained and polite, but it stung Dong Ying'er's heart even more. She looked at the man in front of her, the man that she had been yearning for a long time. Compared to the beginning, he looked more mature and handsome. That kind of elegance and fortitude were mixed together, showing a different kind of charm. This and the emperor, the man who was old enough to be her father, had a completely different kind of youth and tension. Dong Ying'er discovered that even after such a long time, when she saw this man again, her heart that was like stagnant water would still beat for him. "Do you still remember me?" She smiled reservedly. "Back then, Wan Mimi and I were very close." Jiang Xing was somewhat puzzled. He was not a young brat who did not understand anything. Naturally, he could see that the way Dong Ying'er looked at him was somewhat strange. At this moment, Dong Ying'er's words made him feel somewhat disgusted for no reason. Jiang Xing was very clear about what kind of person Jiang Ruan was. Although she appeared to be cold and cheerless on the surface, in reality, she would really treat people well. Lin Zixiang and Xiao Jin were both Jiang Ruan's friends. Jiang Wan would also mention them and sometimes help them secretly with some matters. However, Jiang Wan had never mentioned this Dong Yinger. Jiang Xing had never doubted his own sister's decisions. Therefore, Dong Yinger's words immediately made him feel somewhat unhappy. Moreover, regarding Dong Yinger, he really did not have much of an impression. Therefore, when Jiang Xing heard this, he simply said. He just lightly said, "Oh, my memory is too shallow." Dong Yinger's heart ached. How could Jiang Xing say such words so lightly? To her, wasn't this the same as admitting that he could not remember what she had said? Why did he have to embarrass himself like this? Dong Yinger's heart surged with complex emotions. She knew that today, Jiang Xing had entered the palace to discuss the matter of Jiang Ruan's abduction with Empress Dowager Ida, so she deliberately waited for him on this road. She wanted Jiang Xing to see her and not ignore her like he did in the past. But if she was already a high and mighty empress, feared and respected by everyone in the palace, why did this man still ignore her like before? Why? It was because that woman. Dong Yinger forcibly suppressed the case in her heart and tried hard not to make her expression appear distorted and sinister. She said, "I heard that General Jiang is going to marry Miss Xiao." Chapter 242. Jiang Xing frowned. Clearly, Dong Yinger's question did not make him happy, but he still replied politely, "Yes." Hearing Jiang Xing's words, Dong Yinger's heart suddenly ached. She saw the impatience in Jiang Xing's eyes, and unknowingly, an irrepressible resentment quietly rose in her heart. Why? Since she was young, she had been the apple of her parents' eyes. Cheerful, enthusiastic, and considerate, there was no one who did not praise her. But what did she get in the end? Her father sent her to the palace to protect his official career, her lover treated her coldly, and her former sisters would only watch her die. Everyone in this world had betrayed her, so why should she let these people live well? Dong Yinger stared at Jiang Xing for a long time before she suddenly smiled. "I heard that Ruan Mimi was kidnapped by thieves and her whereabouts are unknown. She and I used to be good friends, so I am really worried about her. I hope nothing bad has happened." Jiang Xing was sensitive enough to notice the strange tone in Dong Yinger's words, as if she was gnashing her teeth in anger. Although he was protective, he was now more mature than before. He endured the displeasure in his heart and did not bicker with her. He only said indifferently, "I am indebted to Xiu Yi's concern. This general still has matters to attend to, so I will take my leave." After he finished speaking, he no longer looked at Dong Yinger, as if looking at her one more time would dirty his eyes. He left with large strides. Dong Yinger stood in the same place and watched Jiang Xing's receding figure. She slowly revealed a smile, but at the moment, this smile seemed a little twisted. Unlike the chaotic situation in the capital, the environment Jiang Ruan was in seemed to be very quiet and elegant. The servant girl who came to serve her every day was mute and never spoke a word. Besides this servant girl, she did not see anyone else. This room had everything she needed, and there were even a few travel books, probably for her to pass the time. Sure enough, it was Xianli who gave the order and Qi Man acted. He also knew that she still had value, so he did not make things too difficult for her. These days, Jiang Wan also tried her best to adapt to the environment, and as time passed, she increasingly confirmed the fact that she might be pregnant. With this understanding, Jiang Wan became even more careful in her daily work. It was as if she really treated this place as a good place to cultivate her mind and body. Every day, she would recuperate with peace of mind. Her only regret was that there were no abortifacients here, but it also made Jiang Ruan even more determined to resolve everything as soon as possible and leave this place. On this day, the weather was a little gloomy. It started raining early in the morning. Because it was the beginning of spring, the rain didn't stop once it started. It lasted from early morning to late afternoon. The air was damp and chilly. Some tender green buds had already sprouted on the branches outside, and the tender seedlings seemed to have the feeling of spring. Jiang Yuan stood in front of the window, lost in thought as she stared at the branches. Suddenly, the door was pushed open and someone walked in. The sound of those footsteps was different from that of the mute and mute maids. When the mute maids walked, their footsteps were as silent as a cat's, so Jiang Yuan could hardly hear any sound from here. Although the footsteps were light, they weren't light and careful. Instead, they seemed to be casual and arrogant, like a wild beast approaching its prey and slowly preparing to attack. Jiang Yuan smiled faintly. After waiting for so long, they had finally arrived. The smile on her lips quickly faded, and when she turned her head, she just happened to reveal a trace of astonishment. The person standing at the door was not a mute maid. On the contrary, compared to the mute maid whose existence was almost indiscernible, this person standing there was a natural eye-catching existence. It was a woman wearing a bright red dress. However, this dress was different from the clothes of the Jin dynasty. It was sprinkled with gold powder and embroidered with complex patterns with gold thread. Even in the absence of sunlight, it seemed to sparkle. The thin red dress revealed a slender waist, which was adorned with a tinkling sound of small bells. Her feet were also not wearing shoes, only a string of green bells hung around her ankles, which made her bare feet appear even more fair and jade-like, as if they were carved into an antique. What was even more frightening than the pair of feet was the face on top of them. Jiang Yuan was already as charming as a demon, but this woman had the ability to turn all living things upside down. Her gaze seemed to have a life of its own, pure and holy with a hint of evil. Her face was clearly devoid of makeup, but her lips were smeared with the reddest rouge. It was as if a cluster of flames had suddenly appeared in the white snow of spring, unrestrained and unrestrained, about to engulf a person. This woman's appearance was beautiful and alluring, but it was more like a complex combination of abstinence and debauchery. As long as one approached, one would feel as if their whole body was about to be sucked in. Jiang Yuan was a woman, and if an ordinary man saw her, he would think that she was a vixen and would be willing to be sucked dry alive. This was probably the holy maiden of the southern frontier. Jiang Yuan's heart calmed down slightly, and she slowly looked at the woman. The woman naturally caught the flash of amazement in Jiang Yuan's eyes, and a trace of complacency appeared in the corners of her eyes. She did not find this complacency annoying, but instead had a different kind of flirtatious and coquettish charm. Jiang Yuan. She spoke slowly, her tone strange and pleasant, as if it came from nature, as if she had only begun to talk to someone after a long time. Jiang Yuan nodded. I am the holy maiden of the southern frontier, Dan Zhen. She said. It's an honor to meet you. Jiang Yuan replied. Dan Zhen was somewhat flabbergasted, and her voice sank. You know my name? It's just a polite greeting. Jiang Yuan smiled slightly. When in Rome, do as the Romans do. It seems that the holy maiden has not yet become accustomed to the customs of the great Jin dynasty, so you took it seriously. Dan Zhen was somewhat annoyed. She naturally heard the ridicule in Jiang Yuan's words. She said that she was an outsider. The people of the Jin dynasty had always looked down on the small border countries. Even when the southern frontier had not yet been destroyed, they still paid tribute every year, but they were still affectionately called the barbarians of the southern frontier by the people of the Jin dynasty. Now that Jiang Yuan mentioned these words again, it sounded a little harsh to Dan Zhen's ears. She frowned, her two delicate eyebrows slightly raised, and then she slowly said, "Your mouth is quite sharp." Likewise. Jiang Yuan replied. She was not afraid of what Dan Zhen would do to her at this moment. Although the alliance between Xianli and the southern frontier was not very strong, now was a time of life and death. Xianli would not allow any accidents to happen, so he would certainly grasp the weakness of the southern frontier and make them have no choice but to agree with his decision. As for Qi Man, from so many years of interaction, this person was determined and planned. She was a person who took the overall situation into consideration. She also had no enmity of life and death with her, so naturally, she would not kill her immediately. Before this, Jiang Yuan had speculated that the southern frontier now had two masters. One was Qi Man, and the other was the Dan Zhen in front of her. However, it was obvious that Dan Zhen was far inferior to Qi Man, whether it was in terms of skill or breadth of mind. Therefore, Dan Zhen could only be the one being led. Qi Man was good at control. Under Qi Man's control, it was impossible for Dan Zhen to make a move against her. If it was in the past, Jiang Yuan would naturally be fearless, but now that she was pregnant, even if she did not consider herself, she had to think about the child in her belly. Therefore, all along, she had carefully guided Dan Zhen's emotions. In her bones, Dan Zhen was a person who would not admit defeat. Subconsciously, she still wanted to compete with her. This was the self-awareness of a woman. For example, just now, Dan Zhen was already extremely beautiful, but from her actions today, it could still be seen that she had specially dressed herself up. Jiang Yuan was not a man, so how could she be worthy of Dan Zhen's meticulous dressing? Naturally, it was because in Dan Zhen's heart, she still had the thought of competing with Jiang Yuan. Your birth can't be considered very good. Dan Zhen spoke unhurriedly. As she said this, she also sized up Jiang Yuan from head to toe. The corners of her lips curled up, and her eyes revealed traces of disdain. Your birth is even more lowly. I heard that you were once enslaved by the country servants. It's really ridiculous. She played with her slightly curly hair with great interest. I have heard of your deeds. At that time, when that brother of yours was called the god of war, it was also partly because of your contributions. I originally thought that you definitely had some ability. Now, it seems that I have overestimated you. You were so easily taken away by others. Staying here as a forbidden object is really too boring. Jiang Yuan was calm and unruffled in the midst of chaos as she looked at her. Her expression did not change at all because of her words. Not to mention that Dan Zhen was deliberately provoking her, even if she did not know Dan Zhen's intentions, she really did not take these words to heart. In the past, there had been too many rumors and slanders. Why would she pay attention to these small words? Dan Zhen smiled slightly and slowly approached Jiang Yuan. Suddenly, she reached out and grabbed Jiang Yuan's neck. Dan Zhen's hand was very soft, as if it had no bones. If such a small hand was held in the hands of a man, it was enough to make that man's heart run wild. But at this moment, it was wrapped around Jiang Yuan's neck like a snake. There was only a kind of gloomy chill, like a ghost. You are really weak, Dan Zhen admired Jiang Yuan's expression. If I cut here, you will be dead. What Jining Wang Fei? Oh. Jiang Yuan tilted her head and avoided her hand. She stared into her eyes and said, Why do you want to kill me? Because of Xiao Xiao. At the mention of the two words Xiao Xiao, Dan Zhen's expression changed slightly. At that moment, the eyes that were originally full of spirit seemed to suddenly become very distorted. Even Jiang Yuan felt that something was wrong when she saw the gloomy coldness in them. Her obsession was actually so deep. Jiang Yuan was both surprised and angry. Xiao Xiao and this woman had only met a few times, but this woman had stubbornly chased him from the southern frontier to the great Jin dynasty. She had the intention of restoring the country, yet she could not wait to put her to death. Wasn't the reason for this disaster? Do you understand him very well? Dan Zhen suddenly sneered. Do you think that you are so great as a Jining Wang Fei? He was an eagle on the grassland and a lone wolf in the desert. He would never have anything to hold him back in his life. You were just an ugly stumbling block, yet you dared to be so complacent. It was really ridiculous. Ridiculous. At the end of her words, she could not help but become angry. Jiang Yuan raised her eyebrows. Dan Zhen's obsession with Xiao Xiao was really deep. As long as Xiao Xiao was mentioned, it was extremely easy to provoke her emotions. What was this? For the first time, the incomparably pure holy maiden, who had been abstinent for a long time, was moved. Because she could not have him, no one could have him. In the end, what did she want to do? Turn Xiao Xiao into a puppet and store him forever. Just like the secret techniques of the southern frontier in those stories. As for the lone wolf and the eagle, Jiang Wan actually felt that it was somewhat funny. Perhaps that man indeed had such an awe-inspiring and inviolable appearance in front of others, but when she had seen him pester people, perhaps Dan Zhen would not be so obsessed. It was just that Xiao Xiao's pestering appearance was not something that anyone could see. Jiang Wan also smiled slightly. I am indeed a stumbling block, but this stumbling block is something that he himself wants to pick up. Perhaps the holy maiden is not a stumbling block, but rather a helping hand, but hasn't he still kicked it away? Oh, I was wrong. Now that you two have different paths, you are destined to be old enemies since many years ago. What does the holy maiden want to say? Jiang Ruan's counterattack had not changed for so many years. She did not like to waste too much of her breath. She would always find someone's wound and step on it with all her might. When she was done, she would sprinkle a handful of salt on it. She did it in a natural and unrestrained manner. Those who quarreled with her were all angered half to death by her. Dan Zhen was a holy maiden and had an extremely high status in the southern frontier. Normally, she was aloof. When had she ever spoken so much to anyone? Moreover, no one had ever made things difficult for her. Towards her words, they were all executed without question. On the contrary, Jiang Wan had suffered countless doubts since childhood, in both her past and present life. Therefore, such a counterattack could be said to be at her fingertips. As expected, Dan Zhen's complexion changed after hearing her words. Any woman who had lost face in front of her love rival, especially when this face was taken away by her sweetheart, how could she remain indifferent? Dan Zhen almost wanted to swallow Jiang Wan whole. That beautiful face of hers was almost about to be torn to shreds. However, a moment later, she revealed a smile and said mockingly, "What's the point of saying all this? I don't need his willingness. What I want is his submission." Submission? Jiang Wan seemed to have heard a funny joke. She smiled and looked at Dan Zhen. Holy maiden, didn't you say that he is an eagle in the grasslands and a lone wolf in the desert? You also know that an eagle soars to the 9th heaven and a lone wolf walks 1,000 miles alone. He can be hunted, but he cannot be tamed. Have you ever seen a tamed eagle and a hungry wolf? Since this is the case, why talk about submission? Dan Zhen had gradually adapted to Jiang Ruan's way of speaking. She slowly smiled. That smile actually looked somewhat strange. Miss Jiang, you are really naive. Perhaps this is the reason why the women of the Jin dynasty are so naive, because they have been raised in their boudoirs. In fact, the submission that I am talking about is not what you are talking about. What you are talking about is the submission of the heart, but what I am talking about is the submission of the person. When your country, the entire great Jin dynasty, has submitted to the foot of the southern frontier, not to mention the eagle and the lone wolf, even this piece of sky, this piece of desert, will have to submit to me. Her words were so arrogant that Jiang Wan did not answer. In Dan Zhen's eyes, such silence was a sign of Jiang Ruan's retreat. She smiled contentedly and said, "You can rest assured that I have never thought of becoming his helper. Whether he is an eagle or a lone wolf, in this life, he can only stay by my side. If he wants to leave, break his wings and pull out his sharp teeth. Just wait for the iron hooves of the southern frontier to flatten this land, and all of you here will be captured by us. As for him, I will poison his eyes blind, break his legs, and let him live well, live by my side." This kind of creepy way of expressing love was probably something that Jiang Wan had never heard of in her previous life. If Xiao Xiao heard these words, she did not know what kind of situation he would be in. Jiang Wan sighed in her heart. However, she did not show it on her face. She just looked at Dan Zhen and said, In this way, I will be of no use. Why don't you just kill me? Hee hee, Dan Zhen laughed. This time, there was a bit of excitement in her smile. She said, naturally, I want to kill you. How can I spare you? Killing you like this is too easy on you. He was originally my prey, but he has been defiled by you. I have already thought about how to deal with you. I will make your body full of holes, and then pour in the smallest and oldest eggs of the southern frontier kingdom. Let them germinate and break through the soil in your body. You will become a living vessel. Like this, you will live in pain for a long time. You will be like the insects. I will let you see with your own eyes how he will surrender at my feet. Isn't that good? Jiang Ruan was slightly startled. She did not know why, but she vaguely remembered that in her previous life, before she died, Jiang Su had made herself into a human swine, unable to live and unable to die. Wasn't it also because she wanted her to watch pain or suffer? That was indeed a kind of unbearable feeling. Dan Zhen's hatred for her was really not shallow. However, Jiang Ruan knew that this was not the reason why Dan Zhen did not kill her at this moment. It was just because of Xianli and Qi Man's instructions that it was not convenient to make a move now. And she also wanted to use Dan Zhen to do something. Jiang Ruan smiled slightly and said, how can your southern frontier kingdom trample the land of my great Jin dynasty so easily? Could it be that the generals and soldiers of the great Jin dynasty are all dead people? The Holy Maiden probably thinks that there is an opportunity to take advantage of the current tense situation in the palace. I think that the Holy Maiden should also form an alliance with the Eighth Highness, but doesn't the Holy Maiden think that this alliance is too hasty? You must know that in His Majesty's arrangements, there is no such thing as the Eighth Highness becoming the future crown prince of the great Jin dynasty. Dan Zhen also smiled, what does your emperor count as? Now he is just a useless person. But there is still the 13th Highness, Jiang Ruan interrupted her words, the 13th Highness is intelligent and knowledgeable. More importantly, he's doing it right and proper. Justified? Dan Zhen seemed to think of something, and her eyes suddenly lit up. She looked at Jiang Ruan and said, you probably think that the so-called justified is an imperial edict. With this imperial edict, you have bet on the right treasure, and there is hope. Jiang Ruan nodded, but there was a trace of understanding in her eyes. Dan Zhen sneered and turned to go out the door. After a moment, when she returned, she was holding a long wooden tube in her hand. Her smile was somewhat malicious. Miss Jiang, do you feel that this thing is very familiar? Jiang Ruan did not speak, but stared closely at the wooden tube. Jiang Ruan was well aware of what was in the wooden tube. When Dan Zhen saw her motionless eyes, she seemed to be even more excited. She suddenly opened the wooden tube and pulled out something from inside. That thing looked very familiar. When the long scroll was unfolded, it was impressively an imperial edict. Do you think that no one will find out if you hide the imperial edict in the carriage? I have to say, you are always so bold, but it is easy to make mistakes. Now, your so-called hope has fallen into my hands. You have to know that the 13th prince would have nothing if it weren't for the imperial decree. If the emperor died at this time, and it was related to the 13th prince, what do you think would happen? What would happen? Jiang Ruan also sneered in her heart. She knew better than anyone what would happen. Because in her previous life, she had been stigmatized as a demoness who brought disaster to the country. The emperor's death had fallen on her head, and in the end, she had become the sinner of the whole world. And Xianli had stripped clean and sat in that position. There was not a single word of fault, and all of it was singing praises. This was the truth. At this moment, Jiang Ruan just said lightly, so what if you have this imperial edict? One day, it will be found, and there will be a day when it will see the light of day again. As long as I wait until that day, my hope will not be in vain. When Dan Zhen saw the hope in Jiang Ruan's eyes, she suddenly felt a little irritated. She did not know why, at this time, Jiang Ruan still had such high expectations for something that was impossible to happen. Was this stupidity or naivety? Dan Zhen did not know. She only knew that right now, the expression that she really wanted to see on Jiang Ruan's face was not this. She should be regretful and depressed, in so much pain that she wished she was dead, blaming herself, and feeling guilty. She should not be brimming with hope. At this moment, the thought of making her regret frantically resounded in Dan Zhen's mind. She could no longer care about anything else. Suddenly, she took out a tinder from her bosom. The tinder was ignited, and she threw the imperial edict onto the tinder. In an instant, the fire engulfed the bright yellow silk. Jiang Ruan's expression suddenly changed. She only shouted, "No," and was about to rush up and snatch the imperial edict from Dan Zhen's hands. But how could Dan Zhen let her do as she wished? Her body lightly dodged, and that bright yellow silk was sprinkled with some kind of powder, causing it to burn even more fiercely. In just a short moment, the fire had completely engulfed that thing, leaving only a little red remnant that lay pitifully on the ground. Jiang Ruan stared blankly at the pile of ashes on the ground. Although she was somewhat displeased that Dan Zhen did not show the unbearable pain that she had imagined, Dan Zhen was finally satisfied. Just now, she had been overbearing, and this woman, who had acted as if she had everything under her control, had revealed such a blank expression. She slowly walked to Jiang Ruan's side and deliberately asked, "You see, your hope is gone." Jiang Ruan lowered her head and did not speak. Dan Zhen sneered and said, "In my eyes, you are nothing more than an ant. Your so-called hope is not worth mentioning to me. So Jiang Ruan, even your great Jin dynasty, the 13th prince that you support, will be like this imperial edict in the fire. They will become a pile of ashes and become nothing. And he, in this life, can only stay by my side." After saying this, Dan Zhen no longer paid attention to Jiang Ruan and strode out. Today, she had already vented her anger, and her heart was incomparably carefree. If she went out for too long, she was afraid that it would arouse suspicion. Today, she had carried Qi Man on her back. Qi Man had given a death order not to touch a single strand of Jiang Ruan's hair. For Dan Zhen, this was infuriating. Looking at the person that she hated but could not put her to death, this was simply like suffering. Fortunately, today, it seemed that it was not bad to make that woman lose her wits. As for the imperial edict, Dan Zhen was not worried at all, because this imperial edict was also a scourge. Even Xianli himself would eventually destroy the imperial edict. Rather than let Xianli personally destroy it, it would be better for her to destroy it in front of Jiang Ruan. That was equivalent to destroying Jiang Ruan's hope. It was enough to make her collapse, and that was what she most wanted to see. After Dan Zhen left, the mute servant also returned. She looked at Jiang Ruan with some fear. Just now, she had probably been waiting outside, and it seemed that she was very afraid of Dan Zhen. Jiang Ruan looked at her and expressionlessly said, "Clean this thing." After saying this, she got up and walked towards the couch. The mute servant was a little surprised. Just now, from the expressions of the two people, Jiang Ruan clearly cared about this thing. However, at this moment, this thing had already been destroyed by Dan Zhen. Shouldn't Jiang Ruan be heartbroken? How could she still talk to her as if nothing had happened, and not even the slightest hint of sadness on her face? Jiang Ruan did not care about the mute servant's thoughts. She just leaned against the cushion of the soft couch with some exhaustion and gently breathed a sigh of relief. That act just now was a little too strenuous. Now that her body was heavier, every time she used too much strength to do something, she would feel tired much faster than in the past. Today, it was really not easy to not reveal a single flaw in front of Dan Zhen. In the end, her efforts were not in vain. Everything was proceeding according to her imagination. When a woman compared herself with another woman, she always hoped to see the other woman's extreme failure. Dan Zhen was the same. She hoped to see Jiang Ruan's most regretful and disappointed side. She could not kill her, but she could not wait to tear apart Jiang Ruan's calmness. Therefore, under Jiang Ruan's deliberate guidance, Dan Zhen would think that Jiang Ruan could be so calm now because of the hope that the imperial edict brought to her. As long as hope was destroyed, it was equivalent to destroying Jiang Ruan's faith. Jiang Ruan's entire person would live in despair every day. Dan Zhen was from the southern frontier, and the people of the southern frontier did not know the Jin dynasty's language. Qi Man was a patient person. Before this, she would not open this imperial edict and would hand it to Xianli intact. Jiang Ruan's plan was extremely risky. If this imperial edict was seen by Xianli, not only would everything fall short of success, even Xiao Xiao's identity would be exposed. Therefore, the crux of the matter was that before Xianli could see the imperial edict had already been destroyed. The matter of destroying the imperial edict could only be done by Dan Zhen. She had the ability and the impulse, so it was best to ask her to do it. Dan Zhen thought that this imperial edict was to establish Xian Pei as the crown prince, but in fact, the name of the heir apparent was Xiao Xiao. From then on, as long as the emperor did not wake up and this imperial edict was completely extinguished, Xiao Xiao's identity would be completely buried in the dust of history. He would forever be the little prince of Jinying Wangfu, the young master of the Genie Guards, and not some royal bloodline. Dan Zhen would stop for a while because of this, and Xianli, with his extremely conservative and stable temperament, naturally would not come out at this time. He would definitely wait for the wind to blow over before coming to see her. And before that, Dan Zhen would not take the initiative to talk about the imperial edict. Therefore, when Xianli arrived, there was no imperial edict. Even if he suspected, he could not find any evidence. Moreover, he would not doubt that he would relax his vigilance against Xian Pei in the palace and wholeheartedly make a fuss about the emperor. Stealing a beam and replacing a pillar with a flower, although it looked simple, every step was like walking on a steel wire. If one was not careful, one would fall into a bottomless abyss. Jiang Wan had such a bold idea, and she had also done it boldly. Every step she took here, because of the child in her belly, was extremely difficult. Usually, it was very simple, but when she did it, she actually sweated a little. She looked for a while, then suddenly reached out and called for the mute maid. The mute maid waited for her instructions. Jiang Wan said, "I am really a little bored, help me find a dog. In this place, I am always alone, and having a dog to accompany me is also very good." The mute maid was a little surprised that she would say this, but naturally, she could not disobey Jiang Ruan's words. Perhaps the people above had already instructed her that whatever Jiang Ruan wanted to do must be done. Therefore, after the mute maid had recovered from her shock, she went out on her own. However, she did not see that Jiang Ruan was gently stroking her forehead behind her back. Her appetite was getting bigger and bigger. Because of the little fellow in her belly, the usual food was obviously not enough. Moreover, she did not know what was going on in this place. Although the food was exquisitely prepared, it was mostly plain porridge and side dishes. Looking at it, she did not have much appetite. Originally, there was no abortion medication. If she did not take good care of her body, she was afraid that she would implicate the child in her belly. However, if her appetite suddenly increased, she was afraid that it would arouse suspicion. These people's minds were deep, and if there was even the slightest thing wrong with her, they would immediately be able to detect it. It would be better to find a dog. In this way, although people could be vegetarian, dogs could not. This way, if her appetite increased, others would also think that the dog had eaten the food. For no reason, Jiang Ruan felt that it was somewhat funny. In this life, from being down and out to being a splendid flower, it could be said that she had experienced the ups and downs of the world. However, no one would have thought that after she married Xiao Xiao and became the Jining Wangfei, who lived a life of luxury and seemed to have a backer. Under such circumstances, she had unexpectedly been reduced to fighting for food from a dog's mouth. Precisely because others could not think of it, Xianli and Qi Man's people naturally could not think of it. Because they could not understand why a noble Wang Fei would fight for food with a dog. Even if she said it out, no one would believe it, and Jiang Ruan was precisely using this point. Using this to cover up her true intentions. She was really sorry. Jiang Ruan's hands unconsciously stroked her lower abdomen. Ever since she came to this world, she had been in such a dangerous situation. Speaking of it, it was all her fault as a mother. However, every mother in the world would do their utmost to protect the safety of their child. Even if there was a mountain of daggers or a sea of fire in front of her, she would still protect her own safety for the child in her belly. As for the capital, Xiao Xiao's faint smile floated in her mind, and she also smiled. In a low voice, she muttered to herself, "I'll leave it to you." Even their Zhao family was like adding oil to a raging fire. It seemed that they were temporarily safe, but who knew what would happen next? One wrong step after another, and the whole game would be lost. This was a matter of gambling with one's life. A trace of sadness flashed across her face, but she still walked over to Dong Yinger's side and sat down. Only then did she raise her eyes to look at her old friend. Dong Yinger looked very different from before. Whether it was her makeup, clothes, or the expression on her face, although she was smiling and trying to act as intimate as before, in the end, her face was no longer as bright as when she was a young girl. Instead, there was a kind of coldness and sophistication on her face. Perhaps the days in the palace were not good. Dong Yinger was sent to the palace at the age of a flower. Her father said that Dong Yinger's position in the inner palace was quite high, but in Zhao Jin's eyes, this was all nonsense. What kind of place was the palace? If one wanted to seek riches and honor, they would naturally feel that it was good. However, Dong Yinger had been pampered and spoiled since she was young. Riches and honor were nothing to her. Instead, the talent that she had lost after entering the palace was more valuable. That was why she seemed so unfamiliar. Zhao Jin sighed in her heart. Among the few of them, the most unfortunate was probably Dong Yinger. Thinking of this, Zhao Jin's heart gave birth to sympathy for Dong Yinger. However, when her gaze fell into Dong Yinger's eyes, a trace of disgust flashed across her face. Immediately after, she heard Dong Yinger's laughing voice. "After I entered the palace, it seems that I have very little contact with you. Now that we meet again, I feel that things are still the same, but the people have changed. I wonder if you have this feeling." After Dong Yinger entered the palace, her former sisters had all entered the palace to see her. However, at that time, Dong Yinger's personality was gloomy and did not pay attention to them. Lin Zixiang had a fiery temper. At that time, she had quarreled with Dong Yinger, but Dong Yinger did not say anything. Later on, when Lin Zixiang saw them again, she said, "She has made up her mind to distance herself from us. Forget it, begging for a relationship won't last long. We treat her like sisters, but she doesn't treat us like sisters." At first, Wen Fei Fei and Zhao Jin did not believe it. They were both born into military families and were not as sensitive to human emotions as Lin Zixiang. However, even though they were slow, they gradually realized that what Lin Zixiang said was right. Dong Yinger was indeed consciously distancing herself from them. Zhao Jin also felt that there were a few times when she followed her mother into the palace and wanted to talk to Dong Yinger. However, Dong Yinger's servant girl always said that she had matters to attend to. It was like this every time. It was as if she was deliberately making things difficult for her. Zhao Jin scratched her head. Later on, when she entered the palace again, she did not ask about Dong Yinger so enthusiastically. Who wanted to use their warm face to stick to someone else's cold butt? However, at this moment, Zhao Jin still sighed and said, "It is indeed so. Among us, you were the best at handling matters and making friends. Looking at it now, you are indeed the most promising." Was she really promising? Most likely not. It was just that the current Xiao Jin was no longer the Xiao Jin who did not know anything. The pressure from her family had caused her to gradually mature. When she spoke, she also began to have her own thoughts. With regards to the changed Dong Yinger, how could she still be as blabbermouthed as before? There was always some distance in her heart. When Dong Yinger heard this, she looked at Xiao Jin meaningfully and shook her head, saying, "Time is indeed heartless. I did not think that a straightforward person like you would say such slick words. Why do you need to say so much in front of me? You must know that I grew up with you. There is no need to guess our thoughts. Is this palace really good? What does your so-called promising count for? Who knows, if His Majesty dies one day, I will also accompany him." When these words were spoken, Xiao Jin was immediately startled. She hurriedly looked around to see if anyone was eavesdropping. Seeing that no one was eavesdropping, she let out a sigh of relief. For a moment, she forgot about Dong Yinger's identity. Knocking her head, she said, "Nonsense. How can you say such things so carelessly? What are you thinking about all day? I already told you to pay attention to your words when you enter the palace. You are so smart, how can you be so foolish? Do you not want your life anymore?" Xiao Jin finished speaking in one breath. She was also startled for a moment and suddenly realized that she had unknowingly lost her composure. In the end, they were bosom buddies who had grown up together. There were still some old feelings in their hearts. Even though they felt that they were already estranged, when the other was in danger, they could not help but think for each other. Dong Yinger also seemed to be startled by Xiao Jin's actions. A trace of complicated emotions flashed through her eyes, but it quickly disappeared. She lazily said, "What is there to be afraid of? The palace is in such dire straits every day. If we were to be on tenterhooks every day, how could we live? If it really is as you think, it is a fate worse than death." Her words carried a rare trace of coldness and casualness, as if she did not cherish her own life. This kind of disappointment and desolation caused Xiao Jin's heart to ache. Back then, among the four of them, Lin Zixiang was so straightforward that it was almost old-fashioned. She and Wen Fei Fei were carefree generals. When the few of them were together, it was inevitable that there would be times when there were disagreements. At that time, it was always Dong Yinger who would come out to smooth things over. Perhaps it was because official Dong handled matters smoothly, but Dong Yinger had the style of her father. When dealing with problems at such a young age, she was very thorough. Among her playmates at that time, even though Lin Zixiang did not say it, they were all secretly convinced by Dong Yinger. Dong Yinger was always kind and generous. Naturally, everyone liked her. Such a bright girl had now become like a withered tree. Xiao Jin could not describe the feeling in her heart, but it was not a good feeling. Seeing this, Dong Yinger smiled slightly and said, "Speaking of which, I invited you into the palace today and not for this matter. I just wanted to apologize to you." "Apologize?" Xiao Jin was startled and looked at her. "What crime? Back then, you felt that I had distanced myself from you. Actually, it was not your misconception. I did it on purpose. I did it on purpose because there was a period of time when I really hated you and was jealous of you. Thus, I did not want to see you. Seeing you made me angry. At that time, I thought that it would be better to pretend that I did not have you as a friend. Thus, I made such an attitude. I think it must have hurt your heart." Hearing this, Xiao Jin was even more puzzled. She did not mind the other things in Dong Yinger's words. Instead, she asked, "Why did you hate me and be jealous of me? Did I do something wrong?" Among her playmates, the estranged attitude towards her was the most obvious. Xiao Jin was also very confused. Now that she heard Dong Yinger's words, she asked the question that had been on her mind for a long time. "Your marriage with General Jiang has already been settled, right? When will you attend the wedding banquet?" Dong Yinger smiled and asked another question. next spring. Zhao Jin was a little embarrassed. This matter has not been settled yet. What do you mean it has not been settled yet? I have already heard about it. Since your two families have already agreed, it will naturally not be far. Dong Yinger smiled mischievously. General Jiang is not bad. He is young and promising. His future is boundless. Younger sister Yuan is your sister-in-law. She will not let him bully you. Moreover, there is no master or madam. In the past, you will be in charge of the family. You will only have a good life. Zhao Jin was a little embarrassed by Dong Yinger's words. She felt that the two of them talked like this as if they had returned to those carefree days when they were young girls. They talked about which child liked which young lady and teased each other leisurely. She smiled. You haven't told me why you hate me yet. Dong Yinger glanced at her, which made Zhao Jin a little puzzled. She only heard Dong Yinger sigh. I am not afraid that you will laugh at me. At that time, I also liked General Jiang. With just one sentence, all the questions had the answer. Zhao Jin listened in a daze. Some fragments flashed through her mind. When they were intertwined, it almost made her mind clear. At that time, Jiang Xing was not as powerful as he was now. He had just appeared in the court, but he saved her and Dong Yinger at the palace banquet. At that time, Dong Yinger seemed to show a little shyness and seemed to like Jiang Xing very much. However, at that time, Zhao Jin was careless. She thought that Dong Yinger naturally showed admiration when she saw an outstanding man. She thought that it was the same as when she saw a handsome scholar. But now, listening to Dong Yinger's words, at that time, she actually really liked Jiang Xing. A good sister falling in love with the same man was fatal to any friendship. Zhao Jin never thought that it would happen to her. She thought that Dong Yinger was just playing around like a child. Unexpectedly, she put her heart into it. She suddenly felt that she didn't know how to face Dong Yinger. Should she be angry because Dong Yinger wanted to be strangers because of this? Or should she feel guilty because as a good friend, she never noticed Dong Yinger's feelings? Dong Yinger smiled slightly. I know what you are thinking right now. Even if you think that I have no sense of shame, that I offend public morals, that is all in the past. When I first entered the palace, I was unwilling, so I didn't accept my fate. Seeing that you all lived so well, I became jealous. I wondered why I was the only one in the world who was so unfortunate. But now, I accept my fate. The heavens are probably fair. My life has long been in the palm of his hand. Why should I struggle? I accept my fate, and my thoughts about General Jiang are gone. Don't worry. Now, my heart is like a mirror. It is all in the past. Her words were calm and carried a bit of vicissitudes. It made people unable to even be angry. Zhao Jin's complicated feelings, which had been at a loss, gradually calmed down after hearing her words. She heard Dong Yinger's indifferent voice say, I am telling you all this today because I don't want to leave behind any regrets. Everyone will die, but I am not willing to die with regrets. I don't have many friends in the palace. Back when I was in the Fu, I only had you. I don't want to leave with regrets. Pausing, Dong Yinger said, I just said that I don't know when I will return. Before that, I always hoped to leave behind some memories. When Zhao Jin heard this, she immediately thought of what Dong Yinger had said before. She asked, did you hear some rumors? Why do you keep saying that? Dong Darren hasn't thought of any ideas? Your tone makes it sound like you don't want to live anymore. Ideas? Dong Yinger laughed bitterly. I said long ago that this is my fate. What ideas do I have? The first half of my life has already been ruined. What should I do next? Even if I keep my life, I will have to conceal my identity. I can't even return to my own home. What is the point of living? As for father, he sent me here to protect the Dong family. I have to do things to the end. I might as well restore the Dong family's reputation. At the very least, I can give the Dong family a title of loyalty. What you are doing is wrong. How can you? Zhao Jin wanted to continue, but she was interrupted by Dong Ying'er. She said, Zhao Jin, can you forgive me? When a person is about to die, their words are kind. Moreover, when Zhao Jin thought about it carefully, other than being a little cold to them, Dong Ying'er hadn't done anything out of line. Everyone had grown up together. Speaking of Jiang Xing, Zhao Jin felt sad for Dong Ying'er. It was just that fate could not be forced. Dong Ying'er had fallen to such a state. It was really too pitiful. She composed herself and looked at Zhao Jin. I have never blamed you. Liking someone isn't a big deal. I don't blame you. I will always be your sister. Dong Ying'er laughed softly. She reached out and held Zhao Jin's hand. She smiled and said, I know that after so many years, the easiest person to persuade is you. You are probably the only one who can be so generous and not bicker with me. If you like someone you like. She laughed self-mockingly. Did you bring the things you brought into the palace? Zhao Jin was listening to Dong Ying'er's words seriously. When she heard this, she said, I brought them. I asked my brother to steal them for me. He doesn't know that I brought them into the palace. Zhao Jin's hometown was rich in precious ginseng. These few days, the emperor was seriously ill. The use of ginseng in the palace was increasing day by day. It would take a long time to collect them. Zhao Jin's family had 2 good ginseng. This was something she already knew. Dong Ying'er asked Zhao Jin if she had it. It would be good to bring it to the palace to boil some medicine for the emperor. Zhao Jin agreed. Her father didn't really care about these things. It would be fine as long as her brother stole it. Zhao Jin said that she would give it to the husband of a friend who was seriously ill. Her second brother didn't say anything more. Thank you very much. Dong Ying'er said with a smile, although he is the emperor and usually has a harem of 3,000 beauties, I also hope that he can live a little longer. Not for anything else, just for myself. She looked at Zhao Jin, thank you. Between you and me, there is no need for thanks. Zhao Jin said heroically. The 2 of them started to talk and laugh again. They looked like a pair of good sisters who had never been estranged. By the time they reached the outside, the sky had already turned dark. Because the Zhao family's carriage was still waiting outside and the emperor was seriously ill, Dong Ying'er couldn't keep her. She personally let her personal palace maid send Zhao Jin out of the palace. The palace maid acknowledged and left. Zhao Jin was about to step into her own carriage when she suddenly heard someone call her name from behind. Jin, Zhao Jin turned her head and saw Jiang Xing walking towards her. Zhao Jin was somewhat surprised and asked, why are you here? I came to the palace to discuss a Ruan's matter with the Empress Dowager. I wanted to send some troops out to search. Jiang Xing answered briefly. Seeing her nod, he asked, why did you enter the palace? Asked me to come. Zhao Jin said. Seeing Jiang Xing's somewhat unfamiliar appearance, she took the initiative to add, Dong Xiu Dong Ying'er. With this said, Jiang Xing understood. Thinking back to that day when he saw Dong Ying'er's strange expression, he couldn't help but frown. Why did she ask you to enter the palace? Did she make things difficult for you? No. Zhao Jin quickly waved her hand. After thinking for a moment, she pulled Jiang Xing's arm and walked towards her own carriage. Come up and talk. Jiang Xing followed Dong Ying'er into the carriage. There was a small table in the carriage and Dong Ying'er poured a cup of tea for Jiang Xing. At this moment, after sitting in the carriage and taking a closer look, she discovered that Jiang Xing's face was full of exhaustion. The light stubble on his chin had not been cleaned, making him appear somewhat dispirited and distressed. Zhao Jin and Jiang Xing had not seen each other for a long time. Ever since Jiang Ruan had been kidnapped, Jiang Xing had been busy investigating Jiang Ruan's whereabouts every day. Zhao Jin knew that he was very busy, but now it seemed that Jiang Xing was working harder than she had thought. Zhao Jin couldn't help but feel a little distressed. Jiang Xing drank the tea that Zhao Jin handed him in one gulp and wiped his mouth. Zhao Jin asked, "Is there still no news of Ruan Mimi?" Hearing this, Jiang Xing's eyes darkened and he shook his head. Zhao Jin also felt sad. She and Jiang Ruan's relationship could not be said to be bad. After Jiang Ruan's accident, Zhao Jin also asked her brother to mobilize friends to search for her. However, dozens of days had passed, and there was still no news of Jiang Ruan. Zhao Jin was very anxious in her heart. There were some bad rumors that had spread like wildfire, saying that Jiang Ruan might have already met with a mishap. As Jiang Ruan's good friend, Zhao Jin naturally did not believe them. However, what did the delay in news mean? Zhao Jin was also very afraid. How can there be no news at all? Zhao Jin asked. These people could not have run far. On that day, there were guards at the capital's city gates, and we did not see any suspicious people. Since they are in the capital, we have almost turned the entire capital upside down. Why is there still no news? Could it be that these people can fly to the sky or burrow into the earth? How can there be no news of a living person? It must be that those officials did not handle the matter well, that's why they were unable to find them. Zhao Jin was somewhat flustered and exasperated as she threw the blame onto the capital governor. However, Jiang Xing smiled bitterly and shook his head. These people originally had a premeditated plan. Now that they have hidden Ruan so well that no one can find her, it only proves this point. People that even the embroidered uniform guards cannot find are indeed somewhat difficult to deal with. Moreover, it is very likely that these people are from the southern Xinjiang. As Jiang Xing spoke, he could not conceal his worry. One must know that the methods of the people of the southern Xinjiang were the cruelest. What he was most worried about was that those deranged people of the southern Xinjiang would use cruel methods to treat Jiang Ruan. As long as he thought of the torture that Jiang Ruan might suffer, Jiang Xing felt a piercing pain in his heart. He and Jiang Ruan had relied on each other for survival for so many years. He was still Jiang Ruan's big brother, but he could not even protect his little sister. If something really happened to Jiang Ruan, Jiang Xing would never forgive himself for the rest of his life. Xing, I am a little scared. Zhao Jin held Jiang Xing's hand. I feel very uneasy. Even the daughter of a military family had heard of the cruelty of the secret techniques of the people of the southern Xinjiang. So many days had passed, and there was no news of Jiang Ruan. What did this mean? Could it be that she had already met with misfortune? That's what everyone would think. It can't be. Jiang Xing held Zhao Jin's hand instead. His big hand wrapped around Zhao Jin's small hand. His grip was warm and strong. His tone was also low, slow but firm. It can't be. Ruan is very smart and very strong. She will not give up in any adversity. She is my little sister, and I know her better than anyone else. She will definitely think of a way to protect herself and wait for us to save her. Hearing this, Zhao Jin smiled in relief. It seemed that Jiang Xing's words had made her feel a lot more at ease. She did not say anything else and just leaned her head on Jiang Xing's shoulder. Jiang Xing suddenly thought of something and asked, "Why did Dong Yinger want you to enter the palace today?" Zhao Jin was startled. She remembered Dong Yinger's words in the palace, but she felt somewhat awkward facing Jiang Xing. After all, she could not tell Jiang Xing about Dong Yinger's feelings for him. Although there was still some slight discomfort in her heart, Zhao Jin was not a fussy person. It was just that she was not used to lying, so she could only vaguely say, it was just to enter the palace to reminisce about the old days. Your relationship has always been distant. What is there to reminisce about? Jiang Xing hit the nail on the head and pointed out the inconsistencies in Zhao Jin's words. Zhao Jin was a bit embarrassed and said, Her Majesty's dragon body was not at ease when I came in. She was also anxious and uncertain about her future. There was no one in the palace that she could talk to. In any case, we grew up together. I would not harm her. She probably only trusts me now, so she spoke with me for a while. There was nothing else. Her words were half true and half false, but it was indeed a reason. Hearing this, Jiang Xing was silent for a while. After a long time, he said, In the future, you should meet less with her. It would be best if you do not meet with her again. Zhao Jin was startled. She wondered why Jiang Xing would say such a thing. She did not know that Jiang Xing had met with Dong Ying'er not long ago, nor did she know that their meeting had caused such a storm. She only thought that Jiang Xing might have seen something, but that should not be the case. Puzzled, she asked, Why? The powers in the palace are complicated. Jiang Xing said, Your Zhao family is currently in an awkward position. If you get too involved with her, you might accidentally drag your Zhao family into it. At that time, let's see how you will deal with it. Jiang Xing threatened her. He could not tell Zhao Jin that Dong Ying'er was not a good person. Moreover, with Zhao Jin's straightforward temperament, she might not necessarily listen. It would be best to involve the entire Zhao family. Dong Ying'er was the most filial. Even if it was for the Zhao family, the next time she did something, she would have to think twice. Hearing this, Zhao Jin did not argue any further. She only lowered her head somewhat gloomily. Knowing that it was easy for her to find a dead end every time, Jiang Xing did not try to persuade her. He knew that she would eventually think things through on her own. He merely reached out and rubbed Zhao Jin's head. However, the heaviness in his gaze did not relax in the slightest. Jiang Wan had always been the problem that he was most worried about. At this moment, Jiang Wan was in a quiet courtyard, in a certain room. She was lost in thought as she looked at the large white dog lying lazily at her feet. These days, every day, she would ask the mute maid to prepare more food and share it with the dog. This way, she did not need to prepare a separate portion of dog food. The mute maid did not suspect anything and brought out a large portion of food every day. Jiang Wan alone ate a lot, and the dog also ate a little. However, in the mute maid's eyes, it was only the large white dog that was somewhat gluttonous. In such peaceful days, Jiang Ruan's heart was somewhat anxious. Why was Xianli so slow in making his move? Only by waiting for Xianli to make his move, could the plan be carried out more quickly. Now that she was pregnant, this place was admittedly quiet, but if there was a mishap and she was not careful, she would be discovered. At that time, it would only invite a lot of trouble. And what she wanted to do the most now was not to protect the child in her belly. As she thought this, she only felt a surge of nausea in her throat. Suddenly, she supported herself against the pillar at the edge of the bed and retched. At this moment, the mute maid stepped into the room with tea. Seeing this scene, she was startled and immediately ran forward in a panic. She looked at Jiang Wan, at a loss as to what to do. Jiang Wan had just stroked her chest, and the reaction to her anxiousness was becoming more and more obvious with each passing day. As soon as she raised her head, she saw the mute maid's panicked gaze. Oh no, she cried out in her heart. Without even thinking, she immediately said, What was added to the food today? My stomach is in so much pain. The mute maid was startled and immediately wanted to run out. Jiang Wan said sternly, Stop. Chapter 244. The mute servant immediately turned her head and looked at her in disbelief, but she did not know what to do. Jiang Wan asked softly, "Are you going to call for a doctor?" The mute servant nodded. "There is no need to call for a doctor." Jiang Wan sneered, "I don't trust the doctors here. Go out, and be careful when you cook in the future." Naturally, she could not let the doctor come over, otherwise, if he felt the pulse of pregnancy, things would get out of hand. This mute servant did not look very courageous, and she did not know whether she was pretending or not. Jiang Wan could only deceive this person first. The mute servant opened her mouth and seemed to be somewhat at a loss. Jiang Wan frowned and said, "Still not going out?" Only then did the mute servant hurriedly retreat. After the mute servant left, Jiang Wan rubbed her forehead. This was not the way to go on. But now, she had no way of knowing what the situation was like outside. These days, she stayed in the house. Although she could not go out, every day when she stood in front of the window or walked in the courtyard, she could still see some clues. The environment here was quiet and secluded, and the traces of people were rarely seen. Every time the food was cooked, it was extremely light. If Jiang Wan had not ordered the mute servant to specially cook some fish and meat for the dog every day, she was afraid that not even the slightest bit of meat could be seen in the food. This was not a coincidence. Several times at dusk, Jiang Wan could even hear the faint sound of a bell. She had roughly guessed that this place was very likely to be a temple. Perhaps it was in the mountains, or perhaps it was in the wilderness. In any case, the incense was not strong, and the population was sparse. Hiding herself here was really somewhat daring, but on second thought, it was no wonder that others could not find her. Jiang Wan did not know how far this place was from the capital, but it was also impossible to escape now. Forcing her way through under the layers of checkpoints was wishful thinking. Moreover, it was really not a good idea to leave before the matter was completed. When would Xianli make his move? Only when Xianli took that step, the rest of the matter could be carried out smoothly. Jiang Wan reached out and picked up a small file at the side, and lightly made a cut on the head of the bed. There were already many small lines that had been cut in a disorderly manner. It was precisely the day she came here. Now that dozens of days had passed, Xianli should be starting to make his move. That night, the sunny weather that had lasted for several days suddenly changed. In the evening, a strong wind suddenly blew, and dark clouds pressed down. In just a moment, bean-sized raindrops fell from the sky. The pedestrians hurriedly took shelter from the rain. It was as if the spring scenery of the past few days had suddenly reversed. At night, the wind and rain became even more miserable, and it was extraordinarily cold. The main hall of the palace was very lonely. The burning sandalwood incense slowly emitted green smoke. The palace servants seemed to be used to such a dull atmosphere. They sat silently and minded their own business. In the emperor's bedroom, a man lay on the bed on the huge dragon wound. No matter how luxuriously dressed he was, he couldn't hide the look of death on his face. A pair of hands picked up a handkerchief at the side and carefully wiped the sweat that did not appear on the emperor's forehead. Her hands were slender and white, and her nails were painted with bright nail polish. She was beautiful and young. At first glance, she reminded people of flowers in spring. There was a kind of tenderness that almost dripped water. The only difference was that the emperor's face was already gray. It was as if only skin and flesh were stuck to the skeleton. He looked very old and haggard. Beauty and ugliness, youth and old age, formed a sharp contrast at this moment. There was an indescribable sense of beauty. The woman's face was like a peach blossom. She raised her little finger and pinched the handkerchief back into her hand. She observed the person on the bed with great interest. Her expression was serious, as if she was watching something interesting. After a while, the woman tilted her head and laughed. She said unhurriedly, "Your Majesty, you are really in a sorry state." This person was none other than Dong Yinger. The palace servants guarding outside had already retreated to one side, leaving only Xiao Chen. No, it should be the current Chen Gonggang. Hearing Dong Yinger's words, Chen Gonggang did not show any special expression. He just stood quietly in the room, as if he did not exist. Dong Yinger propped up her cheek with one hand and looked closely at the emperor on the dragon bed. This man was the master of the world who was above tens of thousands and below one person. He could control a person's life and death with one sentence. When she had entered the palace because of this man, she had seen this man's majestic and unstoppable appearance. But so what if he was the son of heaven? Even now, he was still lying on the bed like a dead dog, unable to move and at the mercy of others. Even for her, she could easily kill all the masters in the world. A day together means 100 days of love. Thinking about it now, I really cannot bear to act, Dong Yinger said with a smile. Nyang Nyang, please hurry, Chen Gonggang said expressionlessly. I still have to return and explain to master. Hearing this, a hint of disgust flashed through Dong Yinger's eyes. She suddenly smiled and said, Chen Gonggang is impatient. There is no need to be impatient. At the very least, you will not have come for nothing. After she finished speaking, she took out a small bottle from her sleeve. She opened the cork and placed it under the tip of the emperor's nose. I have to personally help him drink it. Hearing this, the emperor's facial muscles twitched. Then, he said in a hoarse voice, Do. What? Of course, I have to feed your majesty the medicine. Dong Yinger pretended to be surprised. I have remembered our little relationship as husband and wife with your majesty. So, today, I had your majesty wake up for a while. After you drink the medicine, your majesty will be free. Great Master Huiju said it well. There are many sufferings in the world, love and hate. Only by leaving the mortal world can one reach a great realm. I wholeheartedly think for your majesty. Is your majesty going to reward me with some trinkets? Her words were very interesting. It was as if she was acting coquettishly with her lover. However, her words were filled with undisguised murderous intent. Regicide. The emperor struggled to sit up. He roared with all his might, impudent. Someone come. However, his voice was very soft and could not reach the outside. His body could not move. How could he do anything? He was like a fish on a chopping block, waiting to be slaughtered. Your Majesty, stop shouting. Be careful of your body. This is not good. The Empress Dowager has already gone to rest. It is already late. I have always been the one to take care of your Majesty. Today, since our fate is about to end, I will make things clear so that your Majesty will not have any more worries. She looked into the Emperor's eyes and said word by word, Your Highness has long received your Majesty's imperial edict. Naturally, it has been destroyed. Therefore, your Majesty's intentions may not be fulfilled. However, your Highness also asks your Majesty not to worry. He will properly sit in that position and properly govern the great Jin dynasty. Your Majesty can be at ease. When the emperor heard the word imperial edict in Dong Yinger's words, his expression suddenly changed. He then said angrily, Unfilial son. Unfilial son. This is how it is to be in the imperial family. Your Majesty need not worry. Dong Yinger seemed to breathe a sigh of relief. Then, Your Majesty, there is no need to say anything else. It is late at night and the dew is heavy. Your Majesty should rest early. Saying so, she nodded to the other side. Eunuch Chen came forward with a bowl of medicine. Dong Yinger took the bowl from Eunuch Chen's hands and carefully scooped some medicine into her mouth with a spoon to cool it. She then fed it to the emperor. How could the emperor drink it? He only looked at the bowl of medicine with anger and despair. A person's desire to live had always been strong. The emperor used all his strength to tilt his head and the medicine in the spoon spilled all over the pillow. Dong Ying'er sighed softly as if she had a headache. She sighed, "Your Majesty is really like a child. How can you be so noisy when taking medicine?" As she said this, she smiled at Eunuch Chen. "Eunuch Chen, please come and help." After doing all of this, Dong Ying'er said to Eunuch Chen, "Go back and report to your master." Eunuch Chen nodded and turned to walk out of the bedroom. Dong Ying'er sat alone by the bed. The person on the bed was already a corpse. He no longer had the usual vitality. The master of the world, who could summon the wind and rain and was second only to one person, was just a withered corpse. He no longer had any deterrence. However, the expression on Dong Ying'er's face was not as calm as before. Her hands were still trembling slightly. However, in just a moment, the panic in her eyes disappeared and was replaced by a deep sense of ruthlessness. She looked at the person on the bed and said in a low voice, "So what if he is the master of the world? He is just as lamentable. In that case, let's go to hell together." She sat by the bed like a statue for a long time. Until the oil lamp was about to burn out, there was a little eunuch's voice outside. Dong Ying'er slowly raised her eyes and looked at the hourglass that was placed on a high shelf as a tribute from the west. A strange smile appeared on her face. The next moment, her expression changed and a panicked voice came out of her mouth. "Not good. Something has happened to His Majesty." The Emperor's condition suddenly worsened. The imperial physicians of the imperial hospital couldn't save the situation even if they went all out. When the imperial physicians arrived, the person on the bed had lost all vitality. In fact, this was something that every imperial physician had expected. When Xia Qing, the holy hand of Jinling, personally treated the emperor, she said that medicine was ineffective. Since medicine was ineffective, he was just hanging on to life in vain. There would be a day when the oil lamp would run out, but they didn't expect that day to come so soon. All the imperial physicians gathered together, and there was a sense of crisis before the storm. It was night, and the emperor's bedroom was brightly lit. When dawn broke in the east, the first ray of sunlight broke through the heavy palace walls and shone into the gloomy and dark palace. A eunuch wearing a robe dragged out a long and shrill voice. "His Majesty has passed away." The morning voice shook the sky, and the whole court wailed. The eighth prince, who had rushed over after hearing the news, stood in front of the emperor's bed with a sad face and couldn't help crying. He seemed to be very sad, but he had to endure this sadness and couldn't lose his composure. In the eyes of others, he did look like a filial son. Eunuch Chen stood behind him with his head bowed, and his expression was sorrowful. Xianli looked at the emperor's face, but in his mind, he thought of what Eunuch Chen had said to him. The emperor's reaction to Dong Ying'er's probing words before his death was indeed not different from what the others had expected. It seemed that the emperor had really written another imperial edict. Now that the imperial edict was in his hands, he naturally had no worries. In the future, he just had to wait for this storm to pass, find Shi-Man, and completely tear up the imperial edict. In this world, he would be the rightful heir. As Xianli thought this, he suddenly felt a gaze fall on him. He followed the gaze and found Xian Pei looking coldly at him. There was no sorrow on Xian Pei's face. Instead, he was very calm. And in his gaze when he looked at Xianli, there was a kind of understanding, as if he already knew how all of this had happened. Xianli himself didn't know. Xian Pei was only a teenager, so how could he have such a terrifying gaze? It was as if he could see into a person's heart with a glance, and no thoughts could be hidden from those eyes. He froze for a moment, then looked away. The corners of his lips twitched slightly. No matter how terrifying he was still at a disadvantage in this situation. His life could end here. Since the emperor had already passed away, it was naturally his turn next. Among the mournful people in the room, other than Xian Pei, there was another person with an extremely indifferent expression. It was Mushiro. Her pretty face was as cold as ice and she didn't show any special expression. However, Mushiro's personality had always been this cold, so the others didn't find it strange. However, standing next to Mushiro, Dong Yinger seemed especially pitiful. Dong Yinger's eyes were red from crying, her hair was a little messy, and her face was haggard. It was as if she didn't care what she looked like at all. Everyone in the palace knew that Dong Yinger was a person who valued friendship. After the emperor fell ill, Dong Yinger had always been the one to take care of him. She never felt bored and did it better than anyone else. Now that the emperor had died, she looked extremely sad. Compared to the expressionless Mushiro, it was enough to make people sigh in their hearts. Empress Dowager Ida sat in the same place with a heavy expression. The people around her came and went, but her expression didn't relax in the slightest. She had always known better than anyone else why things had come to this point. But occasionally, there would be a trace of sorrow in her eyes. At this moment, Xia Qing, who had been examining the emperor's body for the last time, stood up with a medicine box on his back. His expression was solemn. Although there were many important ministers standing at the moment, he had always been a straightforward person and didn't think of avoiding anything. Instead, he directly said, reporting to the Empress Dowager, His Majesty is not a lamp that has run out of oil. There is something strange inside. When Empress Dowager Ida heard this, she immediately shouted, Xia Qing, do you know what you are saying in front of Ijia? This commoner doesn't dare to deceive the Empress Dowager. When this commoner examined His Majesty's body, he found that His Majesty had been poisoned. This poison isn't rare, but it was mixed with His Majesty's original illness, so it wasn't easy to find. If the imperial doctors carefully examine him, they will certainly be able to see some clues. All the imperial doctors looked at each other. They really hadn't examined the emperor's body. The body of a dead emperor wasn't something anyone could touch. Moreover, with Xia Qing's previous words, everyone knew that the emperor's body was already in such a state. The imperial doctors had always been conservative in their work, and protecting themselves was the most important thing. How could they have thought of this? Empress Dowager Ida's expression changed slightly. She touched the ruby armor on her finger and said sternly, investigate. Several of the imperial doctors immediately obeyed. After a while, the remaining imperial doctors came out of the bedroom. Their faces were also very ugly, and there was even some sweat on their foreheads. Looking at Empress Dowager Ida, she trembled and said, reporting to the Empress Dowager, Divine Dr. Xia is right. His Majesty has indeed been poisoned. Moreover, the poison is still fresh, so it should have just been swallowed. It's just that the poison is too strong, so. As soon as these words came out, everyone was shocked. Their gazes couldn't help but fall on Dong Yinger. Dong Yinger was responsible for taking care of the emperor's daily life. Since there was a problem, naturally, she would be the first to attract everyone's attention. Dong Yinger was also shocked and said, no. It's not me. It wasn't me. The medicine I gave His Majesty was prepared by the medicinal kitchen. She looked panicked. It really didn't seem likely, but there were many people in the palace who were used to acting. Who knew whether it was true or not? Imperial grandmother, you see. Xianli stepped forward, his expression mournful with just the right amount of anger. Imperial father was actually killed by this person. This person is guilty of a heinous crime. He must be found and will not be tolerated. Empress Dowager Ida didn't speak. Her gaze paused on Xian Pei for a moment. Xian Pei's expression was very calm. Empress Dowager Ida slowly withdrew her hand that was stroking the armor. She lightly said, investigate, thoroughly investigate the entire palace. The moment dawn broke, Xiao Xiao stood in front of the window with his hands clasped behind his back. No one knew what he was thinking. Housekeeper Lin silently put on a robe for him and whispered, Master, it's time for you to enter the palace. The news of the emperor's death reached Jining Wangfu almost immediately, but Xiao Xiao didn't immediately get up and go to the palace. There were many officials in the capital. Naturally, because of this sudden news, they began to worry about what might happen in the future. There were no carriages parked at the entrance of Jining Wangfu, and there were no guests in the house. Jining Wangfu was very quiet, and their master had been in the study all night. Even though housekeeper Lin had taken care of Xiao Xiao for so many years, there were times when housekeeper Lin couldn't see through what Xiao Xiao was thinking. For example, at this moment, was there a trace of sadness in Xiao Xiao's heart? He also didn't know. There was probably some. After all, they were relatives who were related by blood. That person had been trying to compensate Xiao Xiao for so many years. Even if Xiao Xiao did something outrageous, he would turn a blind eye to it. Xiao Xiao didn't know what housekeeper Lin was thinking. He knew that the moment the emperor died, there wasn't much turbulence in his heart. All of this had already been expected. The emperor was just a stranger to him. As for the former crown prince Hong Shi and Xiang Xiaoyuan, Xiao Xiao had never seen them. But as for the old Jining Wang couple, Xiao Xiao had been raised by them since he was a child. Naturally, he had a familial affection. All of this had been destroyed by the emperor. Speaking of which, he should hate him. However, Xiao Xiao didn't even have the emotion of hate. As for the southern frontier, he wanted to exterminate them. Because this was the only thing he could do. In this life, he didn't seem to have any purpose. He also didn't know what the meaning of his solitary journey was. Perhaps accepting the genie guard and taking revenge for Crown Prince Hong Shi and Xiang Xiaoyuan was the meaning of his life. So, he really did this. Disregarding his own life and death, he looked at it indifferently. He lived alone until he met Jiang Ruan. Perhaps that was another meaning of his life. That woman was fresh and different from others. He didn't know when she had attracted his attention. In the end, it was confirmed that they had met in their previous lives. Heaven's fate had always been there. Perhaps it was a pity that they had missed each other in their previous lives, so Jiang Ruan was given a chance to start over. He didn't want Jiang Ruan to repeat the same mistakes, so he wanted to use his whole life to protect this woman. And now, everything that Jiang Ruan had done was based on the fact that she had predicted everything that would happen today. Xiao Xiao's heart was very calm. There wasn't even a trace of fluctuation in his gaze, and there was no warmth on his face. Xianli is about to make his move. Xiao Xiao suddenly said. This abrupt sentence made housekeeper Lin jump in fright. He looked at his master in confusion. Xiao Xiao was admittedly cold and cheerless, but what did he mean by saying something that had nothing to do with the emperor's death? It will be done very soon. Very soon, he would be able to pick up Jiang Ruan. Xiao Xiao didn't continue. Draping the clothes that housekeeper Lin had given him, he slowly walked out the door. Housekeeper Lin was left standing alone in his original spot. Although there was no sunlight in the morning, the reflection of housekeeper Lin's face was exceptionally clear. If one were to look carefully, they would discover that the wrinkles on that crisscrossed face had already faded a lot. A person's appearance could change, but when the white hair that was proof of age quietly turned black and the wrinkles gradually faded, youth made the entire face look like a completely different person. Housekeeper Lin, who was wearing an unfamiliar face, was stunned for a moment. He also smiled and shook his head. Suddenly, he sighed and said, "The old general has made his move, the old general has made his move. It's finally this distinguished and elegant old general's turn." The news of the emperor's death spread like wildfire throughout the entire capital. The common people were anxious and uneasy. At the beginning of spring, the true dragon of the great Jin dynasty, the son of heaven, had returned, leaving behind an undecided candidate to be the heir apparent. The civil and military officials each had their own plans. They were betting their entire net worth on an unknown future. Zhao Jin worriedly looked at her second brother and said, "Second brother, with His Majesty like this, what is the situation in court now? The future heir apparent had always been an unresolved problem. The emperor's death had come suddenly. What was even more surprising was that before this, the emperor had not revealed any intention of appointing a crown prince. Before the emperor fell ill, the crown prince had already been deposed. It should have been appointed earlier, but the emperor had not made any moves, as if he was observing something. This was understandable. After all, the 8th prince, Xianli, had always been outstanding. However, he had a dragging mother, Imperial Consort Chen, while the 13th prince, a rising star, had already displayed his intelligence and quick-wittedness. However, he did not have the support of a strong mother's family. These two people's talents and methods of governing the world were not bad. However, to really choose one was somewhat difficult. It was just that while the emperor was observing, he probably did not expect that he would fall ill so quickly. Moreover, after falling ill, he never regained consciousness. Until his death, he did not have the opportunity to appoint another crown prince. The fight for the throne was something that everyone knew would inevitably happen. However, without an imperial edict, it would only make things more chaotic and the fighting more intense. How can you and I guess His Majesty's thoughts at will? Second brother Zhao interrupted his younger sister's words. Do not say these words outside to avoid attracting trouble. Recently, the capital has been very chaotic. Yes, elder brother Zhao heard this and walked over, nodding Zhao Jin's head. You have a straightforward personality and do not know the strangeness of this. I think it is best for everyone to obediently stay in the Fu these days to avoid trouble. Zhao Jin pushed his hand away. I am also worried about father. These days, father also looks very anxious. I do not know what I can do. His Majesty's death came too suddenly. What will the situation in the capital be like in the future, who can say for sure? Zhao Jin, who had always been optimistic, also felt a trace of worry at this moment. A group of dragons without a head, would the court without the emperor really be good? After all, Empress Dowager Edo was old. Even if she came out to preside over the situation, she would not be able to suppress it. In the end, it was still very worrying. Chapter 245. Second brother Zhao patted Zhao Jin's head. You are so young, why are you thinking about these things? Why don't you obediently stay at home and sow your dowry? That's the right thing to do. I think that brother-in-law of mine is too outrageous. He doesn't even teach you a lesson and sees you cause trouble every day. Zhao Jin curled her lips and was about to refute her second brother's words when she saw a servant hurriedly run in with a panicked expression. Eldest young master, second young master, it's not good. There's a group of soldiers outside and they want to arrest someone. Old Master Zhao was not in the Fu at the moment and had left early in the morning. There were only the two young masters in the Fu. Second brother Zhao panicked when he heard this. What soldiers? Arrest who? Eldest young master Zhao was more steady and interrupted second brother Zhao's words. He only looked at the servant and asked, what is the situation? The servant looked like he was about to cry and was so anxious that he couldn't speak clearly. He only said, I don't know. The group of soldiers are fierce and they are shouting about arresting the culprit who murdered His Majesty. Eldest young master, what should we do? Murder His Majesty? Zhao Jin stood up in shock. Isn't His Majesty seriously ill? How did it become murder? What are they doing in our Fu? Could it be that our residents would plot against His Majesty? This is nonsense. Little sister, don't make a fuss. Big brother Zhao frowned. This is not a small matter. Since there are soldiers outside, they must have heard some news. Second brother, take care of little sister. I will go out to take a look. Finishing, he lifted the corner of his robe and prepared to leave. Who would have thought that before they could even take a step, they would hear the sound of messy footsteps coming from the courtyard? A large group of soldiers rushed in, blocking the courtyard so that not even a drop of water could trickle through. It was precisely the three siblings who were trapped in the middle. Big Brother Zhao said coldly, "Everyone, dare I ask what crime has the Fu committed that requires all of you to work so hard?" Young Master Zhao, the leading official, laughed coldly. "Your Zhao family plotted to poison His Majesty and the evidence is conclusive. A heinous crime, unforgivable. Take him away." "What nonsense," Zhao Jin said angrily. Looking at the soldiers who came forward to arrest them, she started to resist. Why would our Zhao family plot against His Majesty? What evidence? Don't make irresponsible remarks here. How can my Zhao family's reputation of loyalty and righteousness for so many years be slandered so casually by you? However, the soldier laughed. Big Brother Zhao stretched out his hand to stop Zhao Jin's resistance and said in a low voice, "Little sister, be quiet. Don't make a move. There's something fishy about this matter. Before the truth comes to light, don't look for trouble." Zhao Jin naturally listened to her big brother's words. Although she was unwilling, she still obediently retracted her hand. However, second brother Zhao was not going to let it go. He asked impulsively, "If you don't explain clearly, don't think about taking us out of this door. My Zhao clan is not without people. How can we tolerate such slander? Miss Zhao, do you want evidence?" The leader of the soldiers also seemed to be a little impatient, and the expression on his face was indescribably strange. "Do you still remember the 2 ginsengs that Miss Zhao sent to the palace a few days ago? That ginseng had been personally tested by divine Dr. Xia and was poisonous. His Majesty had drunk the medicine with the ginseng in it that day, which was why the poison had broken out. Your Zhao clan has such a vicious heart, to actually send such a poisonous thing into the palace, wanting to harm His Majesty, and you still dare to say that your Zhao clan is innocent." Zhao Jin was stunned. Second brother Zhao was a little strange. He looked at Zhao Jin and said, "Little sister. What's going on?" He naturally knew what was going on. Zhao Jin had asked him to help steal those 2 ginsengs. Although these 2 ginsengs were precious, they were not irreplaceable to the Zhao clan. That day, second brother Zhao had only heard Zhao Jin say that he was helping a friend. He was also a warm-hearted person, so he naturally agreed. But what was going on with the words of this soldier? Second brother Zhao naturally wouldn't believe that his little sister was really a sinner who had murdered the emperor, but how did all of this happen? The strange expressions on Zhao Jin and second brother Zhao's faces were seen by big brother Zhao. He understood a little and looked at Zhao Jin sternly, asking, "Jin, what's going on?" Being asked such a serious question by her big brother, Zhao Jin also came to her senses. She shook her head and said, "No, big brother. That day, said that she wanted 2 ginsengs for His Majesty to use to nourish his body. I thought that we had plenty of ginsengs in our hometown, so I stole them. I definitely didn't do it. I didn't want to poison His Majesty. Besides, why would I want to poison His Majesty?" Zhao Jin had already somewhat sobered up when she said the last sentence. She looked at the head of the bailiffs and said this. Big brother Zhao frowned at Zhao Jin, but now was not the time to criticize his little sister. Moreover, big brother Zhao knew that Zhao Jin was definitely not the person who poisoned the emperor. The Zhao clan had always been playing it safe because they were loyal to His Majesty's faction. Because of Zhao Jin and Jiang Xing, they already had the intention to stand on the side of the 13th prince, but in the end, they didn't make it obvious. Besides, although their status among the military officials in the capital wasn't low, it wasn't high either. At most, they were mediocre. How could they be looked up to by others? Thinking of this, big brother Zhao said to the head of the bailiffs, "Little sister is definitely not someone who would do such a thing. I'm afraid there must be some misunderstanding." The head of the bailiffs didn't respond to big brother Zhao's words. He only waved his hand and said, "I'm sorry, young Master Zhao. Now is not the time to haggle. There is no room for discussion. We are only following orders. These explanations can be discussed in prison. After saying this, he turned to his subordinates behind him and said, "Take them away." Because the Zhao clan had misgivings about the orders from above, they didn't dare to brazenly resist. When the time came, they would be charged with an even greater crime. Therefore, although second brother Zhao and Zhao Jin were angry, they still forcefully swallowed their anger and followed big brother Zhao to be taken away by the bailiffs. Before big brother Zhao left, he gave a look to the servant in the mansion. The servant was a manservant who had always been by big brother Zhao's side. Seeing this scene, he silently stood to the side and waited for the bailiffs to start sealing up the entire mansion before sneaking out. The news of the Zhao family being sealed up reached Jiang Xing's ears in an instant. These past few days, Jiang Xing had been under pressure because of Jiang Ruan's matter. He didn't expect that the Zhao family would suddenly catch fire at this time. Under his astonishment, there was also anger. Almost without thinking, he said, "This is slander. It's simply impossible." Zhao Guang looked at Jiang Xing with a heavy expression. They were both military generals, and they all had the same surname. Zhao Guang had a good impression of Zhao Jin's family. Big brother Zhao and second brother Zhao were also very outstanding among the younger generation. Zhao Guang was also very fond of this young lady that Jiang Xing had taken a fancy to. He felt that Zhao Jin didn't have the arrogant air of a young lady from a noble family. Instead, she had the free and easy manner of a military woman. He was extremely satisfied with this granddaughter-in-law of his. Who knew that this would happen so suddenly? Zhao Guang looked at Jiang Xing and said, "Xing, although you have deep feelings for Miss Zhao, you must not act blindly without thinking. We are in troubled times, and the Zhao family is obviously being framed. I'm afraid that there might be some kind of trap involved. Do not throw yourself into it." Zhao Guang had been an official in the imperial court for many years, and was not a man of brawn but no brains. Naturally, he understood a little about these matters. Thus, with one glance, he could see that there must be some other reason for the Zhao family's mishap. He was afraid that it might be related to the matters in the palace. Thus, he had to warn Jiang Xing. Jiang Xing was not an idiot, and he knew that there might be some hidden tricks. However, he had probably inherited the protective nature of the Zhao family. Zhao Jin was now his future wife, and if he couldn't even protect his own woman, what kind of man could he be? Jiang Xing already had an idea in his heart, so he did not respond to Zhao Guang's words. Just as he was thinking about his own matters, Zhao Yuanping walked in with quick steps. He glanced at Jiang Xing and took out a letter from his sleeve. Zhao Guang asked, "Who's this?" Zhao Yuanping smiled and said, "Nephew's son-in-law." When Xiao Xiao sent a letter to Jiang Xing at this time, Zhao Guang became excited. Could it be that there was news of Jiang Ruan? He hurriedly urged, "Quickly open it and see if there is any news from our Ruan." Jiang Xing quickly unfolded the letter and read it. After reading it, he said, "No, it only talks about the Zhao family." Zhao Yuanping said thoughtfully, "Oh. Then what does His Highness mean?" "He wants us not to act blindly without thinking, and to wait," Jiang Xing said. In the palace, Dong Yinger had just walked out of the palace of Compassionate and Peaceful. Ever since that day when Xia Qing came and diagnosed that the emperor had died of poison, Dong Yinger naturally could not escape responsibility. On that day, all the questioning gazes could almost make a person collapse, and Dong Yinger had indeed collapsed. This was because someone in the medicinal kitchen had discovered that the emperor's medicinal soup was poisoned, and the poison had come from 2 old ginsengs. And the origin of these 2 old ginsengs was Zhao Jin. Dong Yinger was unable to explain herself, but at the last moment, someone stood up to testify that it was indeed Zhao Jin who had brought some gifts from the palace to visit Dong Yinger. The 2 old ginsengs were also among the gifts, and even the newly appointed Chen Gonggang had testified to this. Even so, Dong Yinger's suspicions were not cleared, because Zhao Jin had no reason to plot against the emperor. Even if she did, it would be too obvious. How could there be such an obvious poison? In the end, at the last moment, it was a palace maid by Dong Yinger's side who timidly said, "Perhaps Miss Zhao did not want to harm His Majesty." The old ginsengs were originally given to Lady Xiao Yi. As soon as these words came out, everyone suddenly saw the light, and this was probably the case. When Zhao Jin came to visit Dong Yinger, she had brought 2 old ginsengs. The old ginsengs were poisoned, but Dong Yinger did not know about it. Instead, she thought that it would be better to give such a precious thing to the emperor. Who knew that after the emperor ate it, he would die? It turned out that Zhao Jin originally wanted to harm Dong Yinger, but in the end, she accidentally harmed the emperor. Zhao Jin indeed did not have any reason to harm the emperor, but it was not certain for Dong Yinger. Many of the women in the inner palace knew that after Dong Yinger entered the palace, her relationship with Zhao Jin became distant. Since it was not for no reason, there must have been some grudge. And because of the grudge, it was not impossible for Zhao Jin to want to kill Dong Yinger. However, the truth of this matter had not yet come to light. Although they knew the general situation, they only arrested the Zhao family. While Dong Yinger was not the murderer who directly killed the emperor died because of her. These few days, the palace was busy and no one had the time to care for her. However, everyone secretly speculated that this Lady Xiao Yi's life was really not good. It was difficult to obtain favor, but not long after, the emperor died. After the emperor died, this matter came. It was the Zhao family's miss who committed the murder, but she was also implicated. Most likely, her end would not be good. And Dong Yinger indeed showed a delicate and pitiful scene. The mournful expression on her face made people feel distressed, but they also felt that this woman was indeed very innocent. After leaving the palace of Compassionate and Peaceful, Dong Yinger first returned to her bedroom. She changed her clothes. She hadn't freshened up since yesterday, so she looked very haggard. At this moment, she asked someone to prepare the bath water, and then she slowly lay down in it. The water vapor slowly rose and Dong Yinger's face unexpectedly showed a very tender and beautiful color. She seemed to be very happy, and there was even a smile on her face. Things were going much smoother than she had imagined. Dong Yinger did not know whether she was happy or sad in her heart, but those feelings were all ignored. Now, what she most wanted to see was what kind of situation Zhao Jin was in. So what if Jiang Xing liked her? Committing such a big crime, even if lousy deity came, it would be difficult to save her. She should also let them taste the taste of despair. When she first entered the palace, it was exactly like this. At that time, Jiang Ruan did not save her. Now, Jiang Xing's whereabouts were unknown. If Jiang Xing wanted to wade into this muddy water, he would only be dragging himself into it. She did not know whether Jiang Xing would regret the decision he had made at that time. If the person he had chosen was her, today's situation would not be like this. Jiang Xing, after all, was suitable for an intelligent woman. As Dong Yinger thought about it, the more she wanted to see Zhao Jin immediately and see her current appearance. Thus, she quickly finished bathing and called for a palace maid to dress her up. Then, as if nothing had happened, she said, "I did not expect that after being acquainted with Zhao Jin, she would harm me in such a way. This kind of situation really makes one feel indignant. I also want to find her and ask her clearly. Let's go see our former sisters." In the dungeon, Zhao Jin was locked in the last cell. She still did not know what the situation in the Fu was like, and these people did not lock her together with eldest brother and second brother. Instead, they locked her in a separate place. Zhao Jin faintly felt something. Perhaps, in these people's eyes, she was the mastermind behind the emperor's murder, so they wanted to lock her up like this. Although Zhao Jin usually did not understand much about the matters of the court, she knew that as long as the life of a country's monarch was involved, 8 or 9 out of 10 would not have a good ending. Although she was well aware that the old ginseng was definitely not poisonous and that the emperor had died from eating the old ginseng, someone must be framing the Zhao family. Who had such a big grudge against the Zhao family? Just as older brother Zhao thought, the Zhao family was only average in the capital and could not be said to be a tall tree that attracted the wind. Moreover, they usually kept a low profile, so no matter what, they would not have provoked such a big enemy. In Zhao Jin's heart, she faintly guessed one person, Dong Yinger. Dong Yinger had specially asked Zhao Jin to bring that ginseng, saying that it was for the emperor to nourish his body. Who knew that before his body was healed, it would become the emperor's last talisman to hasten his death? In the end, Dong Yinger's words that day had untied the knot in Zhao Jin's heart. She thought that her sister actually truly cared about her, but there had been some misunderstandings many years ago. Now that time had passed, they were no longer the impulsive children they once were. Those unimportant misunderstandings could vanish like smoke in thin air. However, Zhao Jin did not think that Dong Yinger would change so thoroughly. In her heart, she was very unwilling to believe that this matter was Dong Yinger's doing, but she had no choice but to believe this reality. Why did Dong Yinger do this? Zhao Jin's heart did not have the anger of being betrayed, only disappointment. From the moment Dong Yinger made this decision, the last shred of affection they had in the past was gone. Zhao Jin buried her head into her knees. The dungeon was dark and damp, not very comfortable. However, Zhao Jin had practiced martial arts since she was young and was not spoiled, so she did not cry out or complain. Furthermore, at this moment, her heart was very complicated, so how could she care about worldly possessions? The sound of soft footsteps slowly came from the dungeon, and a familiar voice sounded, "You can go down. I have a few words to say to young Lady Zhao." Hearing this voice, Zhao Jin suddenly raised her head. Under the illumination of the torches on the dark dungeon walls, there was a person standing in front of her, separated by an iron fence. It was Dong Yinger. The prison guard quietly put the silver into his sleeve and said with a smile, "Xiao Yi, please speak. I will go down and guard outside." Finished speaking, he looked at Zhao Jin in the dungeon and shook his head. Now, everyone knew that the young lady of the Zhao family in this dungeon was a vicious person. She actually wanted to harm the sister that she grew up with, and for no reason caused the originally favored Dong Yinger to suffer an undeserved disaster. This kind of woman was really too scary. After the prison guard left, the palace maids beside Dong Yinger also left, leaving only Dong Yinger and Zhao Jin in the dungeon. Zhao Jin stared at Dong Yinger, and after a long while, she said in a hoarse voice, "You did it. So you only understand now." Dong Yinger smiled lightly, "Yes, I did it, but you know it too late." "Why?" Zhao Jin grabbed the cell door as if she was about to rush out. She gritted her teeth and said word by word, "Why? Why?" Dong Yinger tilted her head and thought for a moment, "Why? There are too many reasons. For myself, and also for 8th Highness. Only by using your hand to pull His Majesty down, and also by using your Zhao family to pull the person I want to pull, can I help 8th Highness complete his great cause. From the beginning to the end, there must be a sacrifice. Unfortunately, Zhao Jin, this person is you. Of course, this is not the most important thing. The most important thing is that I don't like you, and I want you to die. Therefore, when I was deciding on this candidate, I immediately chose you." Zhao Jin looked at Dong Yinger in disbelief. The cruelty in Dong Yinger's words made her shiver. 8th Prince? This matter was related to the 8th Prince. She didn't think that Dong Yinger was the 8th Prince's person. She didn't think that Dong Yinger would sell her life to the 8th Prince, and even betray herself. But all her doubts reached the peak when she heard Dong Yinger's last sentence. What did Dong Yinger mean? She said, "What did I do to make you hate me so much? You didn't even let go of my Zhao family." Zhao Jin, I don't understand why you can live your life so naive and stupid. Dong Yinger gently frowned and looked at her. When you and I were young, you were the most carefree one. You didn't need to learn etiquette, you didn't need to learn housekeeping, and you didn't need to learn to be tactful. As long as you like it, you like it. If you don't like it, you turn around and leave. You like to dance and play with swords, so your two brothers took you to practice martial arts. I've never liked you. Your father's official rank isn't higher than mine, and your Zhao clan isn't as prosperous as my Dong clan. However, you seem to be living a much happier life than me. You don't lack anything that I have. Even what I don't have, you have. Zhao Jin paused and looked at Dong Yinger like she was looking at a madwoman. You hate me because of this? That's why you hate me. If this was the case, then Dong Yinger was really crazy. Moreover, when they were young, their relationship was very good, and Dong Yinger never showed a trace of dissatisfaction. Even now, Zhao Jin had always thought that their feelings for each other were sincere. It was only after Dong Yinger entered the palace that they became strangers to each other. However, the feelings they had for each other in the past were not fake. If Dong Yinger was really jealous of her when they were young, then her ability to hide her feelings was really too scary. Of course not. Dong Yinger smiled lightly. This kind of thing is not in my eyes. But Zhao Jin, you seem to have forgotten that I told you about Jiang Xing. Zhao Jin was surprised, then suddenly realized and cried out, "You like him?" Of course I like him. From the first time I saw him, I liked him. Dong Yinger said, "He saved me at the palace banquet. I liked him very much and personally went to see him. I was obviously the one who liked him first. I was the one who took the initiative first. Why was it you who got him in the end?" Zhao Jin, do you know how much I hated you when I found out it was you? Dong Yinger glared at Zhao Jin. Today, she wore plain white clothes to observe mourning for the emperor. The makeup on her face was also very simple, making her look very elegant. But at this moment, her eyes were wide open and her facial features were somewhat distorted because of her emotional agitation. She looked like a female ghost. How can matters of the heart be forced? Zhao Jin looked at her in disbelief. You actually hate me because of this? This is what you owe me. Dong Yinger's face was no longer as calm as it was when she arrived, and she loudly shouted back. Then, she paused and continued, when he disappeared at the border, everyone said that he defected to the enemy and betrayed the country, but I didn't believe it. I didn't believe it. At this time, my parents forced me to enter the palace. I didn't want to enter the palace, I liked him. But my parents locked me in the fu and put me under house arrest. I couldn't go out. Later, Jiang Ruan came to see me. You know, I have always been very good to Jiang Ruan. I thought we were friends. Dong Yinger murmured, but how did she answer me? Dong Yinger's gaze drifted, as if she had returned to that day. The incomparably bright and beautiful young girl looked at her coldly, and the words that came out of her mouth cruelly crushed her hope. Jiang Ruan said, "Why should I help you?" She said, "My eldest brother has no interest in you. Whether you like him or not, it has nothing to do with him." Dong Yinger madly rushed to Zhao Jin in the prison and roared, I knelt down to beg her, but she watched me die and did nothing. If I entered the palace at this age, the rest of my life would be ruined. I treated her as a friend, but how did she repay me? Dong Yinger sneered, from that day onwards, I saw it clearly. What friends? What friendship? It's all a lie. She's worse than grass. Ruan Mimi saved you because she was benevolent. She didn't save you, but you can't blame her. Not everyone in this world is born for you. Why should you run circles around because of her? Zhao Jin looked at her with pity. Can't blame her. Then who should I blame? Dong Ying'er stared at Zhao Jin and suddenly giggled. I forgot that you are also the one I should blame. Zhao Jin, you clearly know that I like him. You clearly know. But how did you do it? When I entered the palace, you were like a dove occupying a magpie's nest. Anyone can stand by Jiang Xing's side, but it can't be you. What do you mean by a dove occupying a magpie's nest? Zhao Jin didn't get angry but laughed. She was used to being careless and was more tolerant towards people she was familiar with. Now that she heard Dong Ying'er's words were getting more and more excessive, she naturally couldn't bear it and immediately retorted, you like him, but have you ever told him? If you haven't, then it's because of you. If you have, and he didn't choose you in the end, then it's because he doesn't like you. What does it have to do with me? You say that I am a dove occupying a magpie's nest. What have you done for him? I also personally went to the border to rescue him from the hands of the enemy. Of course, matters of the heart naturally have nothing to do with giving or not giving, but you have to know that Jiang Xing chose me, not because I forced him, but because he chose me. He has me in his heart, and I have him in my heart. Feelings are a matter of two people. What right do you have to feel that I'm sorry? What right do you have to criticize him? Shut up. Dong Ying'er roared violently. Perhaps it was because she was angry, or perhaps it was because of something else. She actually couldn't refute Zhao Jin's words at all. Indeed, feelings were a matter of two people. The person Jiang Xing liked was Zhao Jin, not her. Dong Ying'er understood this better than anyone, but she wasn't willing to believe this. How could Jiang Xing be like this? After stirring up a pool of spring water, he irresponsibly left on his own and flew away with his lover. What did that make her? If it weren't for Jiang Xing, she wouldn't have broken off the engagement and naturally wouldn't have entered the palace. Wouldn't her current life be completely different? No matter what, it would have been much better than it was now. It wasn't like now. Although she looked beautiful, she was actually a puddle of black mud that had long since rotted and stinked. Dong Ying'er was just unwilling to accept that Jiang Xing could still live his own life after ruining her life. People were always like this. Once they fell into a quagmire, they would always hope that the people around them would also fall into the quagmire. It was always better than being alone. She knew that she shouldn't hate Zhao Jin, shouldn't hate Jiang Xing, but she had to maintain her own life in a huge hatred. If she didn't have the support of this hatred, she would die. Dong Ying'er laughed coldly as she looked at Zhao Jin. Is that so? You are very proud. I don't know what methods Jiang Xing will think of to save you now that you are in prison. However, that is exactly what I want to see. This matter isn't over yet. Isn't your love stronger than gold, and a friend in need is a friend indeed? This time, I actually hope that you can fulfill your wish and drag Jiang Xing down with you. That is also something I would be happy to see. What do you want to do? Zhao Jin asked warily. What do I want to do? Dong Ying'er laughed lightly. Zhao Jin, you owe me, so you have to repay me eventually. This time, I will not be lenient. After saying this, she ignored Zhao Jin's questioning and slowly walked out of the prison cell. Dong Ying'er had just walked out of the prison cell when she saw Lin Zixiang and Wen Fei hurriedly walking over with baskets in their hands. They were probably also here to see Zhao Jin. When Wen Fei saw Dong Ying'er, she immediately called out, Ying'er. However, Lin Zixiang immediately pulled on Wen Fei's sleeve and glared at her before looking at Dong Ying'er without saying a word. Lin Zixiang was a person who would show all her emotions on her face. Even after so many years, her temperament had not changed. Even now, it was still the same. Seeing this, Dong Ying'er smiled slightly and took the initiative to say, Zixiang, Fei. What are you here for? Lin Zixiang asked coldly. She had a very sensitive intuition when looking at people. She could almost rely on her intuition to see if a person was good or bad. Some people's hearts were like colored glass, so they could accurately see through people. This was why many children could tell who had enmity towards them with a single glance. Lin Zixiang's mind was pure and was as clear as a child's love and hate. She firmly believed that Dong Ying'er was already a bad person and would not think that she came to see Zhao Jin for any good reason. I came to see Zhao Jin. Dong Ying'er did not mind at all and only said, I did not think that such a thing would happen to the Zhao family. I am also very sad in my heart. Lin Zixiang harumphed, hypocrite. Wen Fei hurriedly pinched Lin Zixiang's arm. After she got married, she did not have many opportunities to go out, much less enter the palace. Thus, she did not know that the relationship between Dong Ying'er and the others had become so bad. She only thought that there was some misunderstanding. Lin Zixiang's words had always offended people easily, so she reminded her. She then looked at Dong Ying'er and said with a smile, since that's the case, we will go in first. Lin Zixiang shook off Wen Fei's hand and walked in on her own. Wen Fei smiled apologetically at Dong Ying'er. Dong Ying'er did not mind and left with the palace maids. Wen Fei stood on the spot with a suspicious expression. Although she did not know what had happened, she still felt that Dong Ying'er's entire person had become very strange. It was as if she had become a stranger. It was clearly the same appearance, but on her body, she could not find a trace of the past. She appeared to be inexplicably gloomy. Shaking her head, Wen Fei shook off the strange thoughts in her mind and hurriedly walked in. She had just walked to the last cell where Zhao Jin was locked up alone when she heard Lin Zixiang's surprised voice. What did you say? Wen Fei was stunned and walked over curiously. She only heard Zhao Jin's slightly tired voice say, I did not think that she would hate me so much, nor did I think that she would use such a vicious method. It's fine if I die, but I cannot implicate my family. What do you want to do? Lin Zixiang asked solemnly. Zhao Jin laughed bitterly, now that things have come to this, I more or less understand it in my heart. I do not know how father and mother are now. Zixiang, help me ask around. If there is really no other way, I can only bear this crime alone. You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.